All right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is an exciting program for me because I feel like I've been working on cosmetic work for a while now, and for a long time I was making no progress. And then I learned about some products that have become available more readily and are actually pretty easy to use. For today's presentation, I'm not going to assume any level of expertise from you guys. I wanted to make this uh, accessible to any level. So those of you who've been doing this a lot longer than I have, bear with me while I try to provide info that'll catch other folks up, and hopefully everyone will get something out of this. Um, I wrote myself an outline here mostly to keep me on the rails. I'm not putting that screen up because I don't think it would be helpful, but if anybody wants a copy of the outline later, you certainly can ask. Um, I forgot to do this, but I'll post my email address, which is always available, and I'm always happy to take emails from people. I'll put that in the chat later, but it's just al@alsguitarworkshop.com. So first, I want to say thank you. Thanks to the Luth Group for letting me put this together, and thanks to Doug for co-hosting with me. Thanks for Ian for all the help in getting this together and organizing the ideas. Big thanks to Rick, who's here today, which is awesome because he's feeling like crap from what I understand. So I appreciate you coming out. Rick Rosenberg, for those of you who don't know, is the guy behind GluBoost, um, which is an amazing line of products that I'm going to talk about in pretty great detail. And Doug is also going to show us a thing or two about what he does with GluBoost. Um, so thanks to GluBoost for providing prizes today. Thanks to West Systems Epoxy, uh, who provided several items for us for our giveaways. And thanks to StuMac for also providing quite a bit um, for today's raffle. So we have over 20 things to give away. There, some of them are products, um, some of them are stickers and kind of assorted other items. So um, it'll be a lot of fun stuff. With any presentation like this, I always like to talk about safety. Safety first. All right, so ventilator mask, use exhaust fans. Um, Over here, I'm lucky enough to have a window right where my bench is, and this fan, if you can see it, um, definitely made a huge difference once I figured out how to rig that. Eye protection, you can see I have here. Also, for those of you who are getting up there in age like me, they make bifocals. That's what these are, so I can. I got these on Amazon. They're quite handy. So, okay. Uh, Also gloves, especially when I first started using GluBoost, I would try it without gloves, and inevitably I would get a bunch on my hands. So even though it's somewhat clumsy to work with gloves on, um, and Doug will probably speak to that too because he probably has a better system than I do. Um, the other thing I find really important is if you're not used to always knowing where you are in proximity to the guitar, you're really going to have to learn that because I don't, I have a 20 by 10 space here. It's pretty small, but it really taught me to be aware of the proximity of the guitar. Obviously, the last thing you want to do is spill the stuff, anywhere that you don't want it. A little bit about ergonomics and self-preservation. It's much easier to do this work if you have a way to suspend it and not be on the bench. When I got my Total Vice system, that helped quite a bit. And if you guys are going to do this kind of work, I highly recommend that because it saves a lot of wear and tear on your body. minimizes neck bending and awkward reaching. But most importantly for me, it turns the guitar into an artist easel. So, you can turn it whatever direction you can get it, whatever weird angle, because a lot of these cosmetic repairs are definitely at weird angles. I thought a lot about the order that I wanted to do this, and I decided to talk about the sales part first after the intro here. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on that. I think that obviously technical skills are really important, but what I find when I talk to other youths about cosmetic work, and often the conversation is the 50 reasons why they don't want to or haven't learned to do that, is usually because they feel like it can never be good enough for the customer. So what I found is the key in that, for me at least, and I think it'll work for others too, is being careful about what you're promising. Be real upfront. I think you have to really be used to the idea of losing customers right up front who are looking for something closer to the factory finish or good as new. So I'm real clear that it's not going to be that it's still a repair. I don't overpromise. I never use the word invisible or the phrase good as new. I put all this in writing. I have a whole sheet about cosmetic repair that I do, that I give everybody. And part of when they make their deposit here, I indicate on the deposit sheet that the deposit is an indicator that they have read and understand everything that I've supplied to them about info about what to expect and what not to expect. The other part is more psychological, and as most most of my training is as a clinical social worker, so I've been working in mental health for 30 years, and I'm always thinking in those terms. Obviously, it's my training, and I got lost in my own head for a long time when I was starting cosmetic repair, and most of that was this is never going to be good enough. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. And what I realized when people were picking up their work is they were telling me like how good it looked, and they were for the most part just bowled over with the end product. So I think that's because I underpromise in general and kind of set their expectations probably lower than what the reality is, but do that on purpose so that they're pleasantly surprised at the end. And it really helped me when I realized how often the customers were telling me how good the repair is. I didn't have to tell them at the end. So that was a real turning point. And again, that kind of informed how I want to word the presentation. And indeed, customers will start on their end using words like, "Oh, this is invisible. I can't tell what's over there. It's good as new." So I think that that's a good way to help you determine the value of your skill. And they'll even say things like that they didn't even know that it was possible to do this kind of work. Or the phrase I probably hear the most is how hard it is to find a shop who will do this. So they're often pretty grateful at the end, for that reason. Okay. I'm going to run down all the products here. Let's see. I'm going to start with the GluBoost stuff because I know Rick isn't feeling well, and so let's talk about that. Ian and I have talked a bit about where GluBoost products stand in our industry now, and how I know it always sounds pretty melodramatic to be talking about how groundbreaking and revolutionary this stuff has been, but I used to struggle with just regular CA glue and whatever accelerator I could find, and it was hard. And then GluBoost came along and really changed all of that. If you guys aren't using GluBoost, it's easy stuff to work with. I think as long as you have enough ventilation so that you don't get stuck in a room that smells like accelerator or CA glue, you'll be fine. Let's talk about these one by one. So the fill and finish products come in basically three main viscosities. There we go. This is the ultra thin. I use this as a sealant. I use this when I'm trying to build up color bit by bit. It's thinner, so you could add more layers, numerically more layers, and build up color. We'll talk a little bit about color theory as well today, but essentially, the rule of thumb that really helped me in my evolution of learning this skill is you go lighter to darker and you build up. As we say, you sneak up on the color. Um, so that ultra thin comes in handy for a lot of purposes. Those are the two main that I use it for. This is the thin. So we have ultra thin, thin, and then regular. And this is the thin. This is probably the one I use the most. You can use it for coloring. You can use it to add thickness and layering, and it's really easy to use. When I really need to build a finish quicker, this stuff is great. Also, I use this to install K&K pickups, and like it's still CA glue, so it just dries less quickly. So you're not in a panic trying to finish in 5 seconds before it dries. So much slower cure time, makes it a lot easier to work with. Um, I put it in these cups. These cups come from the company called Uline, the letter U and then the word line. Um, they come in various sizes. I happen to like this one, but it's really your choice. Uh, I like the cup method because it lasts longer. GluBoost does make palettes, and if you prefer that, you can use that. I found that the cups work a bit better for my purpose, but there's nothing wrong with using their palettes, which are just flat squares. Um, these are nice also because you can reuse them. They don't come perfectly clean, but if I'm doing some black, I can get rid of the old black, and it's clean enough to use again with black again when I have a black project.
Just to be clear for everybody, those are end caps for shipping tubes.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, so they're for cardboard tubes that you ship in, and yeah, we're once again creatively using things that were not built for this purpose. We have the master tint, comes in many different colors, but that's what it looks like. And Doug is going to show us a bit more of his way of using this stuff. People get a little frustrated because it can clump a bit, but there are ways around that so that doesn't matter anymore. Application. I know that there's been a lot of talk and certainly a lot of action around drop fills and the traditional way to do that. I mean, really how I got started with this is years ago seeing Dan's Stumac video on that awesome blue drop fill project that he did. And so that was my starting point, watching that and copying it as best I could. But what I've kind of moved over to is using these makeup applicators. Um, these are the two sizes that I use. You can get these on Amazon. I think I got this type at Doug's last time I visited him. But they're easy to use, and the technique that I use basically is, uh, you know, dipping in the cup, wiping it on, and then spraying it with the accelerator. One of the cool things about using accelerator, if you haven't used it before, is it lingers. So you spray it on the wet glue, it cures that, but it also stays so that your next pass will cure really quickly, if not on contact. So you don't actually have to use that much. Also, by the way, these straws that GluBoost sells, they are awesome. If you don't use those, they're really great because you get less of a fog in your room, and also it's going right where you want it. The master tints come in sets, so there's like the vintage, I think they call it, that sells the yellow, the brown, and the amber. Um, and you can mix and match them. You can build colors, and you'll learn pretty quickly. Like it, I'm not an artist. I never went to art school. I never took an art class, and I had to kind of learn this on the fly. And it's taken a while, but once this stuff came on the market, the learning curve, accelerated quite a bit. Um, the other product I wanted to talk about is Lacquer Shot. This is something that's a bit newer. I think a lot of people that I'm talking to about this, they're not as familiar. Um, if I'm correct, I think Stumac sells uh, the cold check version of this, but not the flash coat. So keep in mind if you're going to try this product, if you're just going for a regular old clear coat, this is what you want, the flash coat. Um, I promised Rick I would talk about the benefits of this. There's a lot. It goes on real thin. I've never used a spray gun. A little bit of background for me: I've never built a guitar and never going to. That's just not an area of interest of mine. So I'm not coming at this, first as a builder and now as a repair person. So when I hear things like, "Well, it's just like a gun," I've never used a gun. I've used an airbrush before, but not an actual spray gun. But there's a definite difference when you use this stuff because it's not like the nozzles that are used in other rattle cans. It goes on nice and thin, dries really fast, um, builds up slowly, but you could do more layers. Once it's dry to the touch. I did a project recently where I was sanding like 24 hours after I sprayed the clear, and it was fine. Buffs out real nice. Um, I couldn't find any witness lines, certainly not on a casual glance. So um, if you haven't tried that stuff, you should definitely give it a shot. And we'll be giving away a can of this stuff later.
Yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in there at
Yeah,
this
sure.
point, the new lacquer shot, I guess it's a purple label, called Flash Coat. It's a high solvent, low solid lacquer. It's nitrocellulose lacquer. It's high solvent, so the reason why it's called Flash Coat, in the repair world, when you're doing repair on old lacquer, you the common approach to doing any kind of touch-up work would be spray a flash coat in between new lacquer and old lacquer in order to get better adhesion. Repair guys for years have been using just what you would call just a very high solvent or low solid mixture of lacquer as a way to blend in little spots without having to refinish an entire back or an entire side or what have you. So you get fewer witness lines because there's a feathering effect at the end of the path of the spray. And Rick has been able to recreate that basically in a can. Um, and we had tested it when it was in the advent of production, and it was fantastic stuff. In fact, when Rick and I were working on that, I had a finishing project in the shop that was just giving me a nightmare of a problem with fisheye fisheye issues as well as too much orange peel, and this thing, came in just at the right perfect time, and it was the perfect solution for it because it just laid down. It's a high solvent. You want to let it flow out well, and it dries super quick. It's a great product. So I could speak more highly of it. In fact, I've got a project that I need for it starting next week. That thank you, Rick. Send me a can.
Hmm. Thanks, Doug, for filling in on the chemistry part that I really can't speak to. So appreciate that. The other um, fill and finish that we use is the white, and it's something that Doug developed. So, Doug, you want to say a little bit about this?
That's the liquid binding stuff we affectionately refer to it as. Right now, I don't know if it's in production. Rick and I talked about it. They're having some production issues as it relates to difficulties with it scaling up. but it's GluBoost version of white that if it's not currently on the website, it hopefully will be soon. Um, it's a white super glue that has it has the same properties as the other fill and finish line, meaning it's flexible. It has a plasticizer in it. It's compatible with lacquer, and it's kind of become the way I do binding repairs rather than having to graft in other chunks of binding, which always look like fake teeth, or having to melt plastic into acetone, which always looks kind of goofy to me. But I use it for lots of stuff. I use it for repairing nut slots. I repair binding and what have you. In fact, I have a guitar in the finishing room now that I'm using for binding repairs that we can take a peek at later if you want.
Okay. I chatted with Rick leading up to the show a bit, and I asked him about what the status of fill and finish white is, and that's why I decided to still talk about it, even though they're not offering it, because he says they're reformulating it. So we're all hoping for
Awesome.
that. Yeah,
That's great news. I'm super
yeah,
excited about that because I'm going to need to order some.
yeah. We're all kind of hoarding our supply and being very careful. Uh, okay, so let's see. I want to talk shortly about a couple Sumac products that I use for shaping. Traditionally, a lot of us were using the razor method, where you serrate a razor blade and put tape on the ends. That's something that Dan has talked about for a long, long time, and I believe Frank Ford originated, if I remember right, originated that
Yeah,
idea.
it's the old Frank Ford trick. Sure.
Yeah. So for years I would do that, but I have a bit of trouble. Sometimes that tape would wear out, and I would end up with scratches. And so I started to look around for other ideas. And one of the things that I found, this is their oval scraper at Stumac. It's really thin. It's a mini scraper. And what I found is if I use this end and go kind of in an X pattern or kind of a back and forth, it really got the surface surprisingly flat for it not obviously not being a flat piece. So that's something I wanted to mention to people. This is really the main scraper that I use when I'm trying to level something. Also, Doug introduced me to the idea of scalpels, and these are just surgical scalpels. The number 10 blade is the one that I use the most. Uh, and you can see, because of its shape, you could use it more towards the tip where it's more flat, or that curved area, and it's quite handy. I have found that if I press too hard, they snap, but that's probably because I'm leaving the blades on past their uh, usefulness. Um, there's other shapes and sharpnesses. They're way sharper than your standard razor blade. And here's one other shape that's similar to the 10. This is the 23, I believe. So, and these you can get on Amazon. Um, this is another handy scraper. It's obviously rectangular, but I do use that as well. Um, and then I'm going to talk about the Bufflex and Asplex later. These are all available on Sumac as well. And we have a set of each, the Bufflex and the Asplex, to give away later, which I was super excited that Ali offered that up, because that didn't take me half a second to say yes, please, to that. Okay, let's talk for a few about West Systems. I first started using epoxy for headstock repairs probably like a couple of years ago. Um, my for those of you who don't know, my shop is relatively young compared to a lot of the folks in the Luth group. I've been in business for like 12 years, and so I'm on the newer side to a lot of this. I've been messing around really from day one with cosmetic repair, but it wasn't until like the last 2 or 3 years that I really got good enough to be able to offer it as a kind of a mainstay. And now what you'll find is the purpose of all this is to open up a new line of business for those who aren't, because it's very doable, and um, that's kind of what I'm hoping that comes from this. West Systems, I learned about through Ian, and I got more familiar with it when I started doing the carbon fiber headstock wrap repairs, the overlay um, that I've been posting on Instagram. And from there, I got to know the company. I started to chit chat with their Instagram manager, and he very generously offered up some of their products for today too. But I wanted to talk about a few of them that I use on the more frequent side. They have a whole line of products, and really they they are geared towards marine work. So most of their products are designed for repairing boats. So they're plenty strong. They're built to withstand the pounding of the ocean, basically. So, but they've also been really interested in the work that I've been doing, and they've been great about collaborating a lot of my posts on their Instagram page. So that's been fun. Um, so I'm going to run down a few of the stuff, their products that I use. The G Flex. A lot of you guys are already using G Flex, but if you're not, it's really great to use. I hesitated for a long time to use epoxy because it's sticky and it's messy, and I just envisioned that it was going to, wreck my job that I was working on as well as my shop. But it's very easy to clean up. You can use naphtha or rubbing alcohol. Um, and it cleans right up. Make sure that you're choosing wisely which one of those two. The naphtha is probably the safer bet, because you wouldn't want to accidentally melt a finish with an alcohol product. G Flex is great because it cures 3 to 5 hours. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. Um, I just usually, honestly, just eye it out. I don't. That's why the bottles are not exactly even, because I think they give a little bit of leeway in their math, and especially for if it's something that really matters a lot for a headstock break, I will definitely measure it out. And um, for that, I bought this scale on Amazon. Works great. Um, so that's the story with G Flex. You can use it with these products. So one of the things I was curious about is, well, what else can I do with this stuff? I saw that they have a whole slew of products out there, and what I noticed is a lot of them on the label say adhesive, not just filler. So what I was noticing with like putty types of filler products, that they did great for filling gaps and making things pretty, but they weren't going to help hold this stuff together that much. But this stuff is really designed to fill as well as adhere. So uh, they're 406 colloidal and the 404. I use the 404 most, but I'm getting familiar with the colloidal also. And I don't know if Scott St. Dennis is here, but if he is, in a little bit, if he wants to say a bit about the 406, he can. Um, I'll show you these, what they look like in a second. And depending on time, I might show you how they look here. I know we have a lot to cover today, so I'm trying to be mindful of that. So these are adhesive fillers, and then this 410 is a fairing filler. So you'll notice it doesn't say adhesive because it doesn't do that. But it fills nicely. I've used it on the sides of headstocks where um, I was doing the carbon fiber repair and needed to fill some space, and I did that nicely, and it was definitely strong enough to uh, gain my confidence that it was going to hold and not flake or chip off.
So if you excuse the ignorant question from me, because
Sure.
I'm not familiar with the fillers that you've got there.
Okay.
Are you using them to fill voids, or are they
Yeah.
or are they a thickening agent, or are they
Yeah. I'll
an
show you.
agent for? Okay.
Um, they're very very dusty. So um, you have to, at the very least, you want to wear a dust mask with these, which of course I'm not, but I'll be careful. I'll put a little bit in the cup here, just to show you. It's almost like the best way I could describe it is like styrofoam dust.
Hmm.
Oops.
I went over to the other. I pinned the other thing.
Thanks.
So you can see it from overhead.
Hopefully you guys can kind of see that, how it looks.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. So that's what it looks like. And then when you add the epoxy, which is, again, if we have time at the end, I'll do that. It really, it's easy to use. You add the epoxy, so you'll mix the. I use it with G-Flex, but you can use it with the 105 206, and you just basically build it up.
So since you're describing it as a filler, I'm presuming it's functioning more as a thickening agent,
Right.
so that you can kind of pack it in, and then once it dries, you shape it to whatever size. So what does it do to the clarity of the mixture? Doesn't matter because you're going to paint over it anyway.
Well, kind of. Yes, I mean, generally speaking, that's true. But you can color the stuff, so that's why another reason why I like epoxy in the compounds. I use these Blendall powders. I have a whole collection of them. This is the one I use the most, the ochre yellow, or ochre, I don't know how to pronounce that. But you can, if you're doing something that's kind of a light golden color, you could again sneak up. You can start your sneaking up process with that if you wanted to. So it's really your option. If you want to just do the coloring with paint, you can, or you can color it in the cup.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a peanut butter consistency, so it's quite thick. It's not gooey or messy to deal with for the most part. And if you do overfill it or spill it, even you can just wipe it up. So it's really not a problem to work with. The biggest issue really is the amount of dust that it creates. So just be aware. I have here. I'll show you on this. I have that on my ceiling, and I often will do my mixing right below that on this table. So and then I have the window fan going as well. So that's kind of my plan, and it works pretty well. But I always have that ventilator on. They also make different viscosities, and also different curing times. So this stuff that I've been using lately, they sent me to try out this G5 5-minute adhesive epoxy. It's super useful. I wouldn't use it with the fillers because it cures too quickly. The G-Flex has a nice long cure time, so working time. So when you use it with the fillers, it's not a problem. You have plenty of time, and then the 105 206 even longer if you're needing more time. So if I have a project where I want to fill it, and kind of by the end of the day I want it cured, so the next day I can do the scraping and everything else, then that's a good choice. The G5 is great for just general gluing up, and if you want an epoxy strength, but you don't want to wait hours for it, that's your solution. They also make this G-Flex thickened, and so if you need something even thicker, like this stuff is the G-Flex is pretty thick. This stuff is even thicker. The G5 is about the same thickness as the G-Flex. Let's see, so I believe that's everything. And I'm aware that I'm throwing a lot at you guys today, so I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. We'll try again, time permitting. We'll get to that too. For epoxy, if you don't know already, a silicone work mat is a great idea. I use plastic medicine cups for mixing, and I'm worried about Mixol tints. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Mixol. You can use this stuff with epoxy. I have heard some people say that it either increases cure time or makes it so it never cures. I haven't found that problem in my uh, work, but um, just something to be aware of. Whereas with the blend all powders, the powders are really nice because you can really dial in exactly how much color. With the mix all, there's you can get a small drop, but it kind of depends on really which you prefer. Um, okay, so that's it for the mix all. And I talked about the blend all powder. Um, Hey Doug, can you go back to the mat, the overhead mat? Yeah, perfect. So part of why I like this stuff is it brushes right on. Obviously, demonstrating on a toothpick is different than a guitar, but what I do with this stuff,
Is that one of the silicone mats you're talking about? Or?
yeah, right.
Okay.
Um, One technique I've been doing is where you just kind of brush it on, and then you can remove it. I know that the general rule in finishing is once the color is on, you don't remove it. You just leave it. But uh, in repair work, I've found that sometimes I put a little too much on. You can sand it off, and uh, you can get a nice shade, and then you can spray it. And uh, I'll talk about the Mohawk products I use for that. When I say spray, often it's with an airbrush with this method.
So this is what old time furniture finishers and furniture repair people would call dry staining or dry rub stain.
Yep.
And they would pat it on with their fingers or with some kind of
Mhm.
rag or in your case you're doing it with a Q-tip and then sneak up on a color. In those circumstances, you you always have to spray over it in order to seal it in, right?
Right. So I'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
When I'll move over to talking about the Mohawk sprays and how I do that. Um, well, I'll go ahead and do that now anyway. That's where my outline is. So what I do is um, I take uh, Doug, can you go back over to that other camera? Yeah, there you go.
Wait,
Thanks.
I'm way ahead of you.
Thank you. All right, so this is what I like to use, and thanks to Ian for introducing me to this. This is so Doug was talking about furniture. Mohawk brand is basically a furniture repair line of um, furniture finishing company, and they focus a lot on repair. A lot of their products are designed for guys who, they're doing some repair on at someone else's house somewhere else, and they need to just be able to spray something on real quick and be done with it. So all their stuff dries real fast. Um, they even have some guitar-based products in their product line too. Um, it's just called something simple like guitar lacquer or something like that. But this is the stuff I like to use, and I use it in an airbrush. Um, Due to time constraints, I'm not really going to talk too much about airbrushing today, but it goes. I mix it in a little jar, 50-50, with lacquer thinner, and uh, it. Actually, I'll leave it here. Um, what I can do because of that mix with the thinner is it doesn't take long. So I can brush it on, and then I can spray it real quick with just a little bit of that 50-50 in the airbrush. Wait a few minutes. Also, that's a good point where if I wanted to do some grain lining, uh, you know, these kind of pens. I think they're called archival pens. Scott St. Dennis told me about them, and I found them on Amazon. But there's all different kinds of graining pens you can use. Um, it's at that point that I might do some graining, and if you layer the blend all powder over the grain lines, eventually it gets kind of that 3D effect that looks really nice. Um, so um, that approach can be used with these other approaches too. Like you can mix if you want to do some powder direct application with some of these other sprays I'm going to talk about here in a second, you can. And by the way, I do all of this for the most part in this little bitty shop that I'm in, 10 by 20. So I found a little portable spray tint spray booth. It's like, I don't know, 3 feet tall by 2 feet wide. Uh, it fits snugly, but it fits in the shop here. And I have a filter that attaches to the back. And I put that orange fan, and it sucks all the fumes into the filter. And that's how I do color when I'm using a rattle can rather than the airbrush. The airbrush I can use right here at the bench. So let's see, I talked about the Ultra Bond. You can, as a clear coat if you wanted to, although I definitely have moved over to the lacquer shot at this point. But the Ultra Flow Ultra Bond, like if I really need to get in and out of there quick and I, can afford it to maybe not look quite as good as the lacquer shot, you can use the Ultra Flow Ultra Bond Clear as a clear coat. I've done that before. I do find that because it cures so quickly, I think that's why, chemically, why it sometimes can blush, but they do have a retarder that you can use to take out that air.
Would you just do us a favor and just quickly grab each one of those cans, bring it
Oh, yeah,
closer
sure.
to the camera so we can see which is which?
Yeah. So there's your retarder.
Okay.
All right. And once again, that's the Ultra Flow. They do, not to be confused with just regular Ultra Flow. Not all their Ultra Flows are Ultra Bond, so just be aware of that. While I'm over here, I'll just talk about this stuff. So they also have a line of coloring sprays. So these are, one of the nice things I like about these is they are designed specifically to be used in ways that we've all taught never to do, which is to do finish on finish. And when doing repairs, sometimes I've experimented around and discovered that that's kind of what I need. So that's what I do. I don't ever really take a finish off and then respray it. I just use this stuff on top of whatever I'm working with. Mohawk has this ultra classic toner, which is transparent and does a really nice job. They have a whole bunch of colors. I got a whole drawer full of the stuff in different colors. Their semi-transparent is called, well, the one I use at least is called Tone Finish Toner. Again, in lots of different colors. So, they focus on yellows and browns mostly, but there's others too. And then this black I really like. It's they call it a colored lacquer enamel, and I did the tail end of a carbon fiber headstock repair on a black guitar, and that's what I used, and it blended really nicely with the black that was on that. It was an old Ibanez from the 80s, and worked out pretty well. So those are kind of what I use for that.
Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
What is the difference in the transparent toner that you're using compared to like just a Mohawk lacquer, like a clear lacquer? Or is it the same?
Ask that again. Say it again. The difference in
The transparent toner that you have on the far right.
Right.
What would be the difference between that and just a clear Mohawk lacquer? Or is it similar?
It's colored. So the toner
Oh,
part,
okay.
you're adding. That's why that confused me too. I was like, what does toner mean? I had to figure it out. But toner is what they use to. So that's the color. Like actually, I spray the tops of the cans to help me remember what's what. It comes out. Yeah.
No, sorry, I missed the color part.
No, that's fine. So the transparent is just very thin color, and then the semi-transparent is you can layer on the color more quickly if you need. And also if you're not as concerned about like the wood grain showing through. And then opaque, of course, is just color.
Yeah, the toners were designed as shaded lacquers that will, when if you spray it on very, very thin, you won't even notice it happening.
Mm-hmm.
And they're designed originally for furniture repair. So if you have a piece of furniture where you have to repair a side of it or put a patch in or stand down a side of it and you're spraying it to match the aged finish, whether it be whatever it is, lacquer or what have you, on an old piece of furniture that's yellowed over time, this will help you get closer to that yellow if you do it in very thin coats. I have used those toners on like fender necks where I'm spraying a fingerboard after having had to sand through the finish if I was leveling the board, and then when I was spraying it, rather than using like a Fender amber spray, which very often gets too dark too quickly, this you pass once, you hardly notice the color change. You pass twice, especially if you're doing misting coats. You go 3, 4, 5 times, and you start to see this thing over the course of a number of sessions develop kind of a deep, kind of very rich yellowing effect, or not yellowing, but ambering effect where it looks like a bit of an aged finish. That's what they mean by toner. It's not actually a color as much as it is as they refer to it as a toner. It's you're kind of creating shader coats as opposed to actual dye coats where you're changing the color in one pass as opposed to say the opaque black where you spray and you just turn it from
You turn it black,
clear
yeah.
to black.
Yeah.
Whereas the shader coats, the more you spray, the darker it gets. And at some point, you obviously you switch to clear coats on top of that because if you just kept spraying more and more and more toner, you're going to get darker and darker and darker and darker.
Right.
But their toner allows you to kind of just do a very subtle light tone, and then if you want to increase it, you can just go for more passes. That's what the toners from Mohawk are designed to do.
That's a huge
Here,
help. Thank you.
this maybe this would look better. Hey Doug, can you spotlight the overhead again? Yeah. So this was done with the toners, the transparent and the semi-transparent, and this is just a piece of wood from Home Depot. So it comes out real pretty. And thanks, Doug, for that explanation, because again, that's I was never a woodworker, and I got a D in wood shop in middle school. People would laugh if they knew I was even doing this work now. Okay, Doug, can we go back to spotlighting the iPad? Can you hit the iPad, which is there you go. Cool. All right. So I want to talk about the Eagle abrasives. Raise your hand if you don't like to wet sand. We're always in our hand, I'm pretty sure. So if you guys don't know about the Super Acilex and the Super Bufflex kit, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about that because that's been really, really huge. Again, I'm trying not to sound too dramatic, but I really one of the problems in making this kind of work truly profitable and not just something that I do to attract customers was the time involved. And these systems have made it so that we don't need to use water anymore. So I'm going to walk you through, and there's a lot of different ways to do this. So this is just what I found to be helpful and works well in getting a really nice end result. I don't have a machine buffer. I just use the Stumac drill attachments, those foam pads. So that's the final, that's as fancy as it gets here. So it's hard to get a really nice end product with, without a buffing machine. But gotten a lot closer with this system. So I'm going to run you through that. And we're, like I said, we're going to be giving away the Super Acilex and the Super Bufflex. The difference in the two kits is just in the grits. So one of them starts at 800. I forget which is which. I think it's Acilex is the lower grits. Starts at 800. And then the other set is
I have a couple over here. The Super Acilex starts at 600 grit and goes through to 1500 grit. 6, 8, 1000, 12, and 15.
So we have
Buff
6,
Lex,
8, 12, 1000, and 15 here. Go ahead.
yeah, the Bufflex is the higher grits, 2000, 2500, and 3000.
Right.
Um,
So let me run you through those. Thanks, Doug, for that. I should have had that was sloppy on my part to not have that set up. So appreciate you getting my back. The starter kits come with these blocks, and there's these different types of pads. I want to talk about those for just a minute. So the 600 is really great. The advantage, you might be wondering, well, how is it that you can do this with no water? And the answer is microfiber towel. You just wipe off, and these papers, they're not that expensive, and they last a really ridiculously long time. So you're sanding, and then you just wipe off your dust and move on. There's several different types of pads. I'll show you them because it's hard on the StuMac website to kind of see what these are about. So you can see this type sticks really well. It's a thicker.
That's a, what is it, a Velcro type material? Like
Yeah, it's similar to that. You can hear it, so it's a Velcro, but it's soft. It's kind of odd, but it works well. It's got a soft back. It bends, but and it's flexible, but it's also somewhat rigid. So as compared to their block, so like obviously a block but even the block is somewhat padded. So you'll get a nice result. It'll hug contours fairly well. I use this for the 600 mostly, and then these also for 600. And generally speaking, the higher up I get, the softer the pad. But I found it useful to buy a couple pads for each grit. So then we have these two types of pads that they have, which are, this one comes off more easily, but it still sticks. It doesn't fall off, which I've been impressed with. And it's a little less rigid, but still somewhat rigid compared to the other one. And by the way, for all I know, I'm not using these in the exact intended way, but it's working well for me. So for what that's worth. Here's another thin pad. It's got holes in it, I think, to help dust travel through. Again, for whatever reason, they decided to make this one more sticky. So, but again, that's the 800 grit. And then we have the 1000, which is in green. And again, for the lower grits, I find it helpful to have this one, which is more rigid. This one's slightly less rigid. I did find for the 800, it is helpful to have this, not rigid at all kind sometimes. So I have those two rigged up. And then we have, more this two different pads, same grit, super handy. So that, buying all this stuff helped me save a ton of time. I can just pick one up, put it down, pick the other up, put it down, and move through these really fast and very effectively. And I do that all the way up to 3000. And then I go over to these guys, these micro mesh pads. They come in with 1500 to 12,000 grit. So basically, I pick up where the Super Acilex or the Bufflex leaves off. So the last four are 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, and 12,000. So 4, 6 purple, and I buy the larger squares and I cut them, whatever size I need. 8, and then 12. And it's really worth doing because at the end, I find that And again, thanks to Doug and everybody else pretty much at the Luth Group who helped give me ideas about which of these products to try. These are the ones that I use a lot. Probably this Novus I've been using quite a bit. And also Scratch X is something that I like. I don't hear people talking too much about that. I love Scratch X. A buddy of mine who did guitar repair for a long time and was really good at it, Eddie Pake. Some of you guys know Eddie. He worked in the auto industry for a long time, and so he had a really great working knowledge of auto products. And he showed me Scratch X, and I've not looked back. I think who has easy access to the chat? And Doug, can you, someone spend, I think we've gotten some chat messages.
Most people are just commenting.
Okay.
You know, let me see what we got.
I only see Andy.
Yeah, Andy was opining on having gotten one of those products for buffing, and it's made a huge difference for him.
Yeah. So I
And then
added it up.
And he put a link in there.
Okay. I added up the cost if you buy this stuff at StuMax, if you're a StuMac, and if you are a StuMax member, it's about $350 if you want to buy all this stuff, and it'll quickly pay for itself. And also, it's really easy to use, and it's made it more fun, honestly, because there's annoying scratches that I used to get. I just don't get with this stuff. So not having that background in building, I know a whole lot less about how to really get the nicest shine on your final clear finish. So this has helped a lot. And then let's see, hand buffing, and so I showed you those three products. Doug showed me, and Ian also showed me these. Again, you'll see that McGuire's is kind of dominant here. Their car products really work quite well. And then Evan Gluck told me this is the best cleaner he's ever used. So that was good enough for me. So I've been using it ever since he mentioned that. Okay. Make sure real quick that I didn't miss anything. Okay. So Doug and I, in prepping for this, had a really interesting conversation, and maybe we could talk about that, and Doug can chime in too. Doug, you talked about what is your questions to ask yourself, and statements to think about when deciding, whether or not to take a job in cosmetic repair, and also to keep your head on straight. Asking what is your motivation, and remembering that there's a difference between cosmetic versus touch up versus restoration. And cosmetic and touch up, I think, get used more interchangeably. Restoration is something different. And if your idea is just to make something go away, then some kind of defect, some kind of problem, that phrase, making it go away, really, really helps a lot when it comes to conceptualizing, your start and middle and end for a job like this. Doug, you want to say a bit about that?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. For me, there's, in my mind, I split the difference between two worlds. When you see our sign out front, it says the guitar specialist repair and restoration. And when it comes to finished repairs or finished restoration or finished work in general, I like to think about it in those two different camps, that I'm either repairing a finish or I'm doing restoration work. And there's a difference between the two, because quite frankly, when you're talking about doing touch-up work, especially when you're doing a lot of the work with these types of what you referred to as like modern products, we're not doing restoration work as much as we're doing repair work. We're covering our tracks while we're doing, other work on a guitar. If you're filing the fret ends of a guitar, and if you're getting those fret ends with the flush with the side of the board, the first thing you're going to forsake is the lacquer on somebody's side of a neck, and you could also see some color loss. In those circumstances, I'm not trying to do restoration work as much as I am trying to cover my footprints in the snow. I'm trying to cover my track so I can do a credible looking repair and replace what I've lost, rather than handing the customer back a guitar whose finish is now missing on the binding, and or it's now you got this white stripe running up where there used to be a yellowed binding on the side of the neck. Or, when somebody comes in with a guitar that they have damaged, they smacked it against the coffee table. The singer was getting adventurous with the microphone, or the bass player was bopping a little too hard while they were standing a little too close, and somebody damages a guitar in some way. That to me is touch-up work, and very often, there's a competing factor between the customer's desires and reality, in the sense where the customer looks at it and they point to this very small spot on a guitar, and they'll point to it and say, "Can you take that out?" And I tongue in cheek, people have heard me say this before, I tongue in cheek look right back at them and say, "Well, you already did. I have to put something back." In those circumstances, I'm not necessarily trying to recreate history. A lot of cosmetic repairs and in restoration work, where you're doing some Herculean repairs, with a side patch on a guitar, or you're doing a peg head break and you've got to plow through the finish on both sides of the break. And those kind of jobs where you're refinishing a part of the guitar, there's a common, very legitimate methodology of finish repair that tries to recreate history and recreate a finishing schedule, going down to the grain filler, sealer coats, color coats, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And very often in those circumstances, when you're dealing with just repairing the guitar so it looks better, you don't necessarily have the luxury of time or the budget to be able to go back and recreate history. You need to do a repair on top of what's there. So I'm not necessarily trying to make something go away, as I'm trying to do what I would commonly refer to as a bit of forgery. So very often then I'm doing what I commonly refer to tongue in cheek as a bit of forgery, where I'm doing more camouflage work than I am trying to make something go away. Because if you've got an imperfection on a guitar, whether it be a ding, whether it be a dent, or whether it be some kind of problem that the guitar's had, we have to then create a set of circumstances where we're hiding the tree among the forest, as opposed to kind of recreating history. Very often we have a ding on the side of the guitar. I have some examples here that we could go through if you wanted to, that I'm in the process of dealing with. That in those circumstances, I don't have the luxury, either in time, budget from the customer, or quite frankly, my inclination, to be able to stand down an entire area of the guitar for the sake of a piece of real estate that's that big, or smaller, or somewhere in that neighborhood. So then all of those techniques for touch-up work come into play, and the motivation is very different from the standpoint of my perception of it, because if I'm trying to recreate something by going back to the original finishing schedule of a guitar, that's a different set of circumstances than the chicanery that's going to take place for me in order to recreate a set of circumstances that can fool the eye well enough so the repair looks better than it did without it. That's kind of what I meant when we were talking.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. While you were talking, I was quickly mixing up some of this. It was 406, and I'm going to add a little bit of Blendall powder. The When you use G-Flex, it has kind of an amber tint to it to start. So
This is the epoxy. This is the epoxy you're mixing now?
yeah, here. It's the 406. This stuff.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. So that's the filler you were talking about.
Yeah. So
into which epoxy?
the G Flex.
Okay.
Like I said before, you can use it with the 105 206 also. So mostly I just wanted to show two things: is the coloring that you can get, and again this ochre yellow or ochre. It's OCHRE. I have no idea how to pronounce that. If someone would.
Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys can see that.
Yeah. So that looks pretty opaque.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely opaque. If I didn't say that before, I should have, because it's opaque. So like I might use this as a base, and then do some graining, and then starting the color process, using one of the methods I talked about. But I don't know if you can see like that. Let me get my glasses on. You can see it's doesn't really go anywhere. So not that I would be careless or cavalier about being over top of someone's guitar, but it kind of helps knowing that.
What circumstance would you be using that kind of a compound in? What repair settings would that be for?
Really, I mean, anything where there's a gap. So, like, let's say I had a headstock that had a chunk missing. As when it snapped off, a chunk of the wood went flying and is still on the gig somewhere. And customer brings in the headstock itself, and I line it up and get ready to glue it, and realize there's a huge chunk missing. This stuff works great for that kind of scenario. And something where, like, usually the GluBoost is what I'm going to go to if I'm trying to fill some kind of gap, because it's quicker than this. But there are occasions where, and again, like I said, when I was doing the carbon fiber headstock repair on the sides of the headstock, I found it was hard for me to get that to line up, exactly how I wanted. So I would use this stuff on that side to fill that gap, because I could, place it pretty easily, and then I could even. There's been times where I've kind of held this in by um, with tape, um, using the strapping tape, which is easy to use uh, um, with epoxy. It doesn't stick to epoxy. So that, everyone's got their favorite methods, and I just kind of like this. I know it's got some disadvantages in that you have to let it sit, but as an alternative to, like, maybe cutting up, creating a piece of wood and putting wood in a gap. I find this to be pretty easy and actually kind of fun to use. Some of this, admittedly,
So you're using this to replace missing wood that you would then paint grain lines in, shape after it's dry, paint grain lines in, and go to coloring over the top of it. This is a replacement for sections of wood, like you have a peg head blowout and you're missing, little areas where you have voids where there was wood that's gone or something like that. This is what you're using that for.
Well, yeah, and one other thing I was going to mention. You and I were talking about crack repairs on acoustic guitars, and I've been using this stuff for that, and really like it because, I, you know, not that cleats aren't a good thing, but I've stopped using them for the most part, unless I really felt for some reason I needed to, just because of the adhesive element to this filler, it's just incredibly strong. So, I told customers what I'm doing, and if they have a problem with the crack repair, I'll put a cleat in there if there's something. But I haven't had any come back yet. So been doing that probably a year at this point.
So you're filling cracks with this that don't join together, or are you using
Yep.
this as an adhesive for gluing together cracks that join?
Mostly, I'll use this if it's a crack that's where I might have put a spline in the past or something else where it's pretty sizable gap. I'll use this to fill that gap, and I'll put a piece of strapping tape underneath the soundboard. Not that this stuff ever drips because it's pretty thick, but just in case, and also just to kind of give it a level bottom. And then when it's cured, I just peel off that tape, and then I sand it, scrape it, and sand it level like I would, just the same techniques as for GluBoost. So not that everybody's going to want to switch over to that, but just want to let people know that so far it's going pretty good. I haven't had anything come back yet.
I wouldn't, sometime in the future, I wouldn't mind seeing what that looks like.
Yeah,
I've
again, I'm real careful with customers. Like if it's going to be something that I know I can't really make it just so anyone's going to think it's disappeared, I'll tell them. I'll say, look, here's the best I can do, and it's not going to be a perfect match. And they're usually okay with that. Usually, with that direct method of applying the blend all and then using an airbrush, that works really well. I asked at some point. The place I buy the Mohawk from is called Klingspor in North Carolina, and they have a really good tech department. And so I got him on the phone one day, and I just asked him all the questions that I could think of. One of them was, I said, "What with that Ultra Bond? What makes it bond? Like, why is that?" Some of us had thought that maybe there's some shellac in there. He said, "Well," he looked at the chemicals, and he said, really, the best way I can explain that is that the chemicals they're using are more akin to CA glue than they are to shellac or anything else. So basically, it's like a lacquer plus some CA glue in there to help it adhere. And so that's what I've been using over top of these powder applications, and that's why, because it really sticks and seals. And then from there, I can do a clear coat of the ultra finish thin, and there are definitely, a lot of this just depends on how perfect you need it to be for yourself and for your customer. So, Doug, like if I was working in your shop and I said, this is done, you might say, the hell it is. It's not, that's not up to the quality or the standard that we do. And so, and every shop has a different level of that. So you just kind of have to decide where your level is and what you're comfortable with. But yeah, next time I get one through, Doug, I'll send you some pictures, or I'll usually post them, so I'll share that with you.
Yeah, like I said, I've never used epoxy for cracks on guitars. I know a lot of people do, but then the concept of using this filler for taking up the slack in a crack that's not closing is intriguing. Of course,
Yeah.
I would be certainly curious to see what it looks like. Does it matter which filler you're using in that circumstance?
I just got a hold of the 406 colloidal. I know Scott St. Dennis has been using it longer. I had been using the 404 high density adhesive filler, and that stuff is really kind of my go-to. I started with
they call it colloidal?
Colloidal, yeah.
Is that named after a Greek god or something?
I don't know. Colloidal. I don't know where they got that from. Oh, I guess it's colloidal, not edal.
So that's a filler that is also acting as an adhesive.
Yes.
I guess. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I just mixed up here. So this is the colloidal, and already it's starting to get thicker, and just since we've been here. But you can see it's still like plenty of working time there if you you need.
Do you know what the cure time is on that, or is that depending on what you're mixing?
So it's G-Flex cure time roughly. So I would give it 5 hours. But I always let it go overnight. I don't ever do anything with it the same day. But like I said, I've been using the 404 high density filler mostly. I'm most familiar with those results.
Okay.
The other thing about this that I wanted to stress is that this stuff is very forgiving. Like if you goof this up and you need to start over, it's really easy to just kind of dig it out and redo it. Whether you're trying to redo color or something about how it was filling a gap. I've had to start over numerous times, and before with other products, I found that every time I did that, A, it wasn't looking any better, and B, the area was getting much bigger. But with this stuff, especially like if you're using scalpels and fine tuned, um, like kind of the corner end of that to scrape something out. If you
Chad Gillender's asking, do these fillers shrink back noticeably after the cure?
I haven't noticed anything like that.
Okay.
I use plenty of them, so like in terms of like filling, I make sure that I'm, have overfill and scrape it out at the end, and uh, I'm not, I'm not trying to get like the exact right amount when it's still wet.
Mhm.
So
And just for clarification's sake, there are some questions in the chat asking about what we're looking at down there. So just for clarification's sake, this is epoxy, G-Flex, you said?
yeah, G-Flex,
This is G-Flex epoxy mixed with the colloidal powder,
right,
and then you have the Blendall ochre color mixed in.
right. So the one of the nice things about G-Flex is you can use as little as you need for the job, as opposed to like the 105 206 where they often come with a pump, or
Mhm.
you just feel like you need to mix a bunch of. But like I've done like just two little dots if I just need that much,
And
and then you just add. Sorry, go ahead.
Jack is asking, do you use any solvents to remove it if you want to start over?
Not once it's cured. That would be like a scrape job.
So
If
if
it's
you
asking,
once it's cured, it's a mechanical removal job
yeah,
completely.
right, right.
Which leads to a question for me. When you're dealing with epoxy, are you being super conscious of, since I've never used epoxy for like crack repairs and such, are you being super conscious of what the compatibility with the finish you're working with is in terms of
No,
solvents for the
um,
guitar?
yeah, honestly, no, because I wouldn't use it on a job where uh, if I or the customer would be really concerned about that level. Usually, I would use it for customers who, hey, I just need you to fix this as best you can, and I trust your judgment, basically, as opposed to, hey, I really want to be careful about the finish, and it's not a good candidate, I think, if it's that kind of customer.
So do me a favor, define good candidate. Is that, to me, that means that you're using this for more, for the lack of a better word, more yeoman repairs
Yeah,
on lesser expensive guitars where there's low risk and issues
yeah,
like that, as opposed to more collectible or high dollar value
yeah.
instruments.
I would say either less valuable or the customer is just really chill about their valuable guitar. I get people coming in here with expensive guitars and they're like, yeah, whatever. I just want you to make it look better. Um, but I haven't had any trouble with compatibility. I haven't had any problems with, like the surrounding finish looking, crappy afterwards, or like getting discolored or anything like that.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So, Doug, do you want to do your demo on? You were going to, if you wanted to do some GluBoost demonstration with the color.
Yeah, I can do something like that. Let me see if I can pull up and find my other camera. So here, that's me over there in the corner. Is that how that song goes?
Yeah, yeah. That's right.
This is our finishing room here, where we'll do a quick tour around here. As Al mentioned before, I do as much of my touch-up work on Total Vice gear as I can, or where I can be away from the guitar and reposition the guitar for the purposes of being able to move around it and not have to hunch over a guitar. So if I'm working in this area, doing a touch-up or working on binding or working on a repair of the finish repair of an area, I want to be able to move the guitar in such a way that it's easy for me to get to those spots. Um, the more important aspect for me as it relates to doing touch-up work is I never, like if I'm here, I've got a touch-up job going here. We had a chunk of the guitar missing here that we're coming to the end of the finish repair. I don't know if it's easy to see or not. No. But there was about a thumb size section missing here that we're coming to the end of doing the color work. And this has been a complete, almost complete GluBoost job on that one. But I never want to be touching up a guitar where the touch-up materials I'm using are here. So Al made a mention before about the proximity of your materials in relationship to the guitar. If I don't want to be in a position where I'm touching up something and my finish is here, or my finish is here and my brush is here and my solvent is here and everything's surrounding the guitar. I like to work away from the guitar and then go to the guitar to put the finish on there. Same thing here. You'll notice I have all of these like hospital bed tables next to the bench that I'm working at. So this way I can put whatever my materials are there, move it aside and work on the guitar so that if I'm touching something up, whether it be if somebody came in and said, can you make that go away? Or if somebody banged something against the guitar and said, can you make that go away? Of course, the joke always comes out, well, you already did. I have to put something back. If I'm working on a stand to do some touch-up work here, which we're doing some work here, this section here, I don't know if this is going to be visible or not, or if can I zoom in at all? So here we're going to be filling and touching up this area here, as well as a crack here and a crack up here. These are going to be mostly GluBoost jobs as well, along with some colors. By the way, if any questions come up in the chat, just keep an eye on them, and
Yeah,
I can't see them.
I got you.
So this here, as Al said before, I'm able to put this guitar in a position where I can position the guitar in such a way that it can act as an easel, and I can sit and concentrate on what I'm doing here and work just on the guitar if I lock it in place. Work on the touch up where I need to be, and or see it from other sides. If I need to move it to the side and get it at a different angle, I can position the guitar in any way I want to, so I'm not worried about so I can see it from all angles, and I'm not just hovering over a guitar. I learned a long time ago that while doing touch-up work, if you're working just on a bench, you've got the danger of always seeing this from one position and one position only. Whereas if you're working where you can work around the guitar or spin the guitar around, that's paramount to getting a good touch-up. Good lighting, of course, is important. So the whole proximity to your materials is important. We keep all of our sandpapers over here. Move the chair. Move the guitar. So we keep all our sandpaper here. We got our wet and dry sandpaper here. We have our micro finishing film all in here. Just a quick word about the Bufflex and the Astellix that we were talking about before. They are great sandpapers. I've just started using those. They are, to a very large degree, they're micro finishing film with a cloth backing. Micro finishing film is a great substitute for sandpapers because you can use no water, very much like these are dry finishing products. You can use micro finishing film for dry finish as well. We have here, I've got 30 micron, which is like a 600 grit, 15 micron, which is about 1,000 grit. And these are the most common ones I use. I've got 9 micron, which is an 1,800 grit. And then you got 5 micron, which is about a 4,500 grit. And there's these papers here from Taylor Toolworks. You can get them either PSA or non-PSA. I've shown them off before, but you're able to get a nice finish without having to go to wet sanding. The biggest problem with wet sanding, of course, is getting the guitar wet and the finish surrounding it wet. If you're doing a finish job where you're doing a touch-up in a certain area and you need to finish an area near exposed wood, or if I've done like Sharon has done here, Sharon's filled the underside of the pickguard with lacquer, and that's going to be wet sanded. This whole area here is now prone to getting wet, and you're going to get that run from water running into the end grain and that rippling effect. So having a dry sandpaper is great to do. Here's where we keep most of our colors. These are all pens in here, different color pens, different quality of pens, graining pens, alcohol pens, Mohawk pens, and the like. So this is all filled with different types of pens and different manufacturers of pens. We've got all our pigments and colors down here. These are our variety of the Mohawk blend powders here. Oh, these are the Mohawk blend powders here. I like making little carriages for them because then I can bring the whole thing to wherever I'm working and get a color or decide what colors I'll be using. These are the Mohawk blend powders. Those are the way I mark the tops of them so I know what color I'm looking at. These are not the Mohawk blend powders. These are aniline dyes from these are Moser aniline dyes and a bunch of other aniline dyes. We've gone through. I think we've done the dry powder episode, which is up on the website somewhere. We got mix all tints. We got the old dry powders here. We got other stuff there. For quick repairs. I'm a huge fan of GluBoost. Here are the GluBoost products I keep. The next time you're in a Goodwill or any kind of thrift store and you see like a K-cup dispenser, that's a great way to store your GluBoost products. I get to be able to keep them all in one place and then pull them out as I need them. I just drop this on here. This is another example of me using some kind of island in order to keep my materials that I'm mixing away from the guitar. So I can mix over here, get my color, and then when I'm ready to put color on a guitar or put clear or something like that, I can work here holding the color and putting it back. I don't have to ever risk accidentally damaging the guitar by doing what never any of us ever do, which is, of course, spill what we're working with. This is also a little cool. I'll show you this. I like to mix on glass because it's easy to clean and it keeps things from getting messy everywhere else. This is a standing desk where I can move this up and lock it, and I can mix without having to bend at the waist and, have to kill my back. I'm all about ergonomics working, so if I'm mixing colors, I can bring this all the way up. I can do all my color work. I can drop this back down when I don't need it and push it aside. That's the tabletop to my. This is my main mixing bench for whenever I'm mixing color. This, of course, will roll around the entire room as I need it, and I can put it anywhere I want it. Here is I'm also widely known as the guy that uses finger cuts. And every time I post something on Instagram with these on, I get jokes about finger condoms. I'm not a huge fan of gloves because they make my hands sweaty. So I always mix using finger cuts. The great thing about finger cuts too, as opposed to gloves, is that if I'm working with some kind of finish, whether it be shellac, CA, GluBoost, lacquer, and I use everything. I'm an all of the above finishing guy. I've got some pre-mixed colors for lacquers here. I've got dirty lacquer here with rust in it. We've covered that before. I've got all my shellacs here for French polishing. We do a lot of French polishing. I do a lot of shellac. We did a 5-part series on shellac for the Luth group, which is, we've got our flame cabinet here with everything under the sun in it, because I'm an all of the above finisher for whatever the circumstance requires. I'm not a believer in one thing or the other. Remember, my whole philosophy here is that I'm a quick change artist when it comes to finish repair. I'm doing repairs to a finish that is more an act of camouflage than it is an act of restoration, even in circumstances like this. I'm not going to be able to recreate damage here. This was, by the way, this was almost as this whole thing was as dark as that. This whole big patch here was dark. This was a matter of excavation of the material, because this is what finish repairs look like when you use lacquer on bare wood. You drop finish in there, it all gets dark, and now it looks like a cosmetic verruca rather than a finish repair, and it's obvious to everybody from 3 blocks away. Our goal, at least my goal, with every finish repair that I do, unless I'm doing restoration work where we're bringing things back down to raw wood, get away from that light reflecting on the glass. My goal is to perform some kind of camouflage where what's going on the guitar is less noticeable than when it came in. And if I get lucky, it disappears and I get to look like a genius. To Al's point, your conversations with your customers to always play down the expectations and over deliver on those promises, and you'll always wind up looking and smelling like a rose. So fill and finish is my favorite fast finish for quick touch-up repairs and being able to cover tracks. They're great for color matching because it's a fast curing finish as opposed to lacquer and shellac. Plus, it doesn't remelt itself. So if I'm doing a lacquer repair, and these, by the way, I don't know if this is showing up. Can you see these lines? Is that showing up there or no?
Are you looking for the lines in where the finish has gone away?
This line right here.
Yeah.
That is a line of fill and finish, because what I'm doing here, I just started here and I started a little bit here. I'm filling these lines of grain with clear fill and finish with a little bit of yellow tint to be able to create a sealed base that looks like my long grain lines. Because if I just did a drop fill of anything here, this is going to turn into a pool of kind of dark brown blood.
Doug, what viscosity of fill and finish are you using on that?
On this one, I can show you how I do it. I use the what is it? The blue? The
Blue, so
blue
the
one.
medium?
This is
Yeah,
what
medium.
is this? Does that say
Yes.
medium on it? That's just fill
They-
and finish pro. That's
Yeah.
not a.
Oh,
That's so
yeah.
that's
They're
I call
all
it medium. The other one's thin, and then the green one is
yeah.
ultra thin.
Then you have the thin, and you have the ultra thin. So on something like that, I would not be using a thin or an ultra thin because that's gonna soak into the grain like water. I want it to be sitting proud of that. So that was one that I just started doing, and we can demonstrate a little bit more of that. But so which one I use depends on the circumstances. In a case like that, and maybe we can even get away with doing it before we do it. If we wet this down with, let me position it so it's flat. If we just do the naphtha trick where if you ever want to know what something's going to look like under finish, meaning lacquer, shellac, something wet, you use naphtha. In my finishing room, naphtha is always in a blue bottle because acetone is always in a white bottle. Don't ask me why I now make the distinction because at one time I didn't. If we pour naphtha over the top of anything, we will know exactly what it's going to look like under lacquer, under shellac, or under any other wet finish. And right away, we can see exactly what happens. That gets super dark and super blemished. So this is going to suck in all of that moisture, and we're going to wind up with kind of a blotchy mess, which it looked much worse than that even because somebody kept applying more and then somebody tried putting color on there. So this is going to wind up being a pretty nasty looking repair. It'll be repaired, but I want to try to look as inconspicuous as I can. So we're gonna do a little bit of a slow job here where we're applying. There's my
Hey, Doug.
yeah.
Corey asks about the color, the lost color during the edge bevel. He asks if GluBoost is how you're attacking that.
So can you ask me that again?
How are you dealing with the color loss on the edge? Corey asked if you're using GluBoost for that.
Color loss on this?
He said, "Oh, binding is what he's asking
Oh,
about."
the edge of binding. Yes, I'm using fill and finish. I'm using the fill and finish powders for that. And then I can show you how I mix that in.
Okay, so hang tight, Corey. We'll get to the color part on the binding.
Yes, but I am using fill and finish as the product, and I'll just blow a little bit of air on that out of canned air just to try to get rid of the moisture. Because if we go back, now you can see here. I think that's a good angle.
Yep.
You can see here. This is still a little bit moist on the outside. We may have to wait until that, or I might have to blow some more air on it until that dries out. But you can see this. I don't know how good the clarity of the phone is, but you see a line here of yellow where it's white here and white here.
Right. You can see that.
This yellow here was as white as everything else. All I did was I just drop filled some colored CA here with a very tiny amount of yellow powder in it. And instead of drop filling it where I just got a whole mess of lacquer in a big area and filled up the whole cup. Here, I'm going to work my way in with a very small brush or a very small toothpick, and I just filled lacquer to here. I filled GluBoost to here. I also did the same thing from here up to here, and um, I didn't get all the way probably because my phone rang. But so that I will do actually, and I'll actually draw lines of grain with GluBoost to seal them individually, so I get this kind of these rails of color that will look like grain lines that are around it, as opposed to a blotch of color just sitting down on it. And that's how I would normally handle that. To answer Corey's question about binding, when there's color loss on binding, most notably on the sides of the neck, where we would be, see if I can back up here. We're dealing with the sides of the neck, where you're dealing with color loss, and I don't know if you can see it on this because of the zoom, but this is yellow underneath the purfling here, and it's white above the purfling here because I had to come down and sand my way through the color. I'll be replacing the color on the side of the neck once we're finished repairing the binding on this. This was a job where somebody had done a refret on it before we got to it, and they had cut through the binding with a saw and fretted it as if it was a non-bound guitar. So we wind up having to do another refret on it. We did a bunch of inlay work on it, and now I'm filling. I'm waiting for this to dry. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm filling. You can see the bulbs. Oh, not pointing there, but you can see the proud areas of GluBoost white. You know, the liquid binding on the sides of the neck where I'm filling those, and I'm waiting for them to probably dry out. But you know, because I want it to really harden well. But here I'm going to now wind up sanding the binding flush and shaping it so it matches the surrounding binding. Once I get these, maybe get a better angle. Can't believe this behind it. Oops, I almost lost movement. There we go. So here, can you see that? Or is that too fuzzy? So that,
Yeah,
that better?
yeah, that's good.
You know, so here, and I wouldn't be doing this position. I would actually probably be doing this where I can tilt the guitar into this position and move it in such a way that it's easy for me to get to this angle right here and just be able to work while I'm standing straight up and file those spots. They're actually filing pretty good. You know, but those areas where somebody cut into the binding, I really didn't want to replace the binding on this entire neck all the way up. This is actually my second pass on the cutout binding. They had sawed through the binding on every fret of the guitar all the way up. I had done the fill and finish job on the liquid binding job on the entire neck. And on the second pass, I decided that I wanted to redo the first 3 or 4 of them. Here you can even see possibly, if I get super close, you can even see possibly here that these are filled. I was taking a close look at them, and I just, with the liquid binding, I very often add tint to the GluBoost white. I'll even add a little bit more white in order to get it a little bit more opaque. And then I'll in the case of those 4 frets, I decided it was not opaque enough on those 4 frets, because as I was going, I was adjusting my mixture, and I got to where I wanted to be by about the 4th or 5th fret. So I decided to go back and do both sides of the first 3 or 4 frets, and that's where I'm at now. Was there a question about the binding?
Yeah, yeah. Did you do the binding fill before the refret?
I do the binding fill before the refret, and that's what I did. Now I'm going back doing the first 4 frets, obviously after the fact. These are with the new frets in, so here I had to, since I decided it could look better, I didn't like the fact that I could see the cuts, even though they were white, but I was going to have to try to hide them under color, and I really didn't want to do that because I would have had to get darker than I really wanted. I'm going to want a really gentle yellow like this here. It's got that really kind of faded yellow. It's even got the points on the yellow where I spin the guitar up. You know, it's got those sections of yellow that have worn away because of somebody's arm being over the guitar here. So it's got that really natural look, that really natural yellow, almost kind of a pale lemon. And that's what I want to use there. If I was going to try to hide those, I was going to have to go darker than I really wanted to, and it wouldn't have matched. I can't see where I'm pointing, but it wouldn't have matched with the binding that's up here. I would have had to get darker here. So I said, let me do these 3 or 4 again. I just got in there with a dental tool. I pulled out what I put in there from underneath the fret, packed it in with the GluBoost white, and then after it's done, I'll resand here, and then I'll be able to brush color on the full length of it. We're also dealing with a couple of gaps here where we had that shrinking binding before the nut. So there's a section of GluBoost white between the end of the binding and the nut. And what I'm going to do there, I haven't done it yet, is I'm going to go in there and I'm going to scrape out a section here right up to the nut and fake the purfling right up to the nut shelf. So this way it looks. And that's what I mean by camouflage. I'm not necessarily trying to perform forgery, but I'm trying to make this thing look like it looks like it's inconspicuous, you know, without looking like that binding at the end of the neck looks like it's somebody with missing teeth.
Hey Doug, Corey's
Yeah.
asking if you're are you applying the color with the makeup applicators?
Either a makeup applicator. I use a bunch of different things. I'll use toothpicks, Q-tips, makeup applicators, paper towels. I use a bunch of things. We have drawers filled with these cups. I buy them by the truckload because I love mixing in those. We'll use a few of these now. So,
Hey Corey, also for anyone else interested, I've been when I use the makeup applicators, I'll dab it with a paper towel to if there's too much on there, because they do absorb a fair amount of liquid, and I find that to be really a great way to kind of control how much color is going on there.
I'm going to come down here. Is that a good angle?
Yep.
So here we've got our mixing palettes. The other thing, by the way, I'll mention about finger cuts. The most important thing to me about them, outside of the fact that I'm a clean freak and I hate washing my hands 1,000 times a day, so it keeps keeps my hands from getting dirty with finish, is that the biggest danger you can run into when you're doing touch-up work is getting some finish inadvertently, or acetone, or solvent, or cyanoacrylate, or something on your fingers. And even though you wipe them off on a paper towel, residue of acetone can still be there. and then you're over here working on a guitar, and you're touching a guitar to see how did that work out? And I say, oh, I need to sand that a little bit more. And everywhere you're touching a guitar, you're either transferring material to where you didn't want it inadvertently, because we're not necessarily conscious of the fact that we had to move a guitar to see it in better light, or we're not conscious of the fact that we have finish on our fingers that we didn't know was there, or acetone or some other solvent, and you end up transferring material that you don't necessarily, not even conscious of the fact that you touched the guitar somewhere, and now you did cause damage to a finish that you're going to get that phone call from a customer later going, there's this fingerprint on my guitar that I can't get rid of, and I don't understand how it got there. So for me, finger cuts are the answer, because if I do get anything on my finger, all I got to do is take it off, throw it in the garbage, put a fresh one on, and I'm off to the races, and I'm clean. Plus, it keeps my hands from getting sweaty. So that's why I use finger cuts a lot, and I buy those by the truckload too. I like the nitrile ones rather than the latex ones, which are less expensive, but I like the feeling of the nitrile ones. So fill and finish, whichever one, I will put color in all of them because they all take color great. Depends on the viscosity, depends on my purposes. Like I said, the thick is in the case of the example we just looked at. If I'm doing finish touch up on the side of a neck after binding work, I might use one of these two. If I'm doing finish touch up work for a ding that I want to fill quicker, I'll use something like this, which is the thin. The ultra thin is great for brushing on. Here, I'm just going to pour a bunch into the bottom of a cup.
Hey, Doug, I'm going to interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
Ian and I decided to do the raffle later, like after the show. So anybody, I just put in the chat a message. Anybody who wants to be part of the raffle, just send me an email, and we'll put your name in the wheel of names.
Make sure to add what country you're from too.
Yeah, I can. Once they email me, I'll get the necessary information.
Another thing about
What was that? Just send an email to you, Al? Is that what you said?
Yeah. I just put my email in the chat.
Okay.
So go ahead, and whoever wants to be a part of the raffle, we got 20 plus prizes, so there's plenty to give away.
Okay. Do we have to be present to win? I might have to leave in a little bit.
No, you don't. We're going to do it later. That's what I'm saying. So if you just send an email, if you're here now and send me an email, that's good enough.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very quickly, my favorite paper towels are just regular Seafold towels that you use for those dispensers in a public bathroom. We buy them at Costco. The reason why I love them is because they're super thin, and when I'm using them, I can just tear them, a whole pile of them, in small stacks, and I have plenty of paper towels to do my cleanup as I'm going. So I can just grab one fold off of this Seafold paper towel and then have a bunch of it standing by, and I'm not constantly ripping paper towels off of rolls.
Hey, can I emphasize that that's, for those not used to GluBoost, that's a really important point. You're going to go through a lot of applicators and a lot of paper towels. So do what Doug's talking about. You won't regret it.
So here, is that too close? This is harder to do with finger cuts on your fingers. Pinching, there we go. So here's our GluBoost that's ultra thin. I will mention that one of the most common mistakes I see people using when they use GluBoost powders, here are a bunch of them. There's yellow master tint, transparent yellow, amber, and brown, or red, or what have you, or blue and black, and they come in a number of colors. The biggest mistake I see people do is they use too little glue and too much color. So when you see people say, "Oh, I like GluBoost Master Tints," the GluBoost powders, but as soon as I add color, I get way too, the glue goes off super quickly and it's almost solidifies or it gets clumpy. Or what I find then, when I found through just from use of it, is that the amount of glue that somebody's mixing color into matters a great deal. Whenever I'm mixing color, it's an unfortunate circumstance, but we do this for a living. Just like bakers who make bagels for a living wind up throwing out hundreds of bagels a day because there's lots of waste. In color repair, there's lots of waste. I mix a lot of color, a little bit of color into a lot of glue. That's the way I sneak up on a color. So I will fill a cup like almost halfway up. If you're doing the kind of finishing repair where you're putting just a tiny bit of color into a mixing palette and then trying to mix color into a small dollop of glue, you're going to always run into frustration because the glue will harden too quickly. The glue will get too dark a color too quickly. The colors won't dissolve into the glue quick enough, or it'll take too long to dissolve into the glue, and it'll seem clumpy, and it's, oh, I've got these things that are still floating around in the glue. Usually it's because you've got too much solid compared to too much liquid. And for me, that's always been kind of the secret to using CA as a substitute for finishes. That's always been the key for me. Not to mention, like I said, it's an immediately dry finish, which if I'm doing lacquer repairs or shellac repairs, and sometimes it's appropriate, and I do those a lot. But as we all know, lacquer melts lacquer and shellac melts shellac because they're all solvent-based finishes where more solvent softens the finish underneath. And if you've got color on your base that you go to put more color on top of it with more finish, the solvent in the finish is going to cause the color beneath you to um, re-soften and kind of balloon up into the upper layers that you're trying to put down, and you get this kind of mushy mess that is hard to control. You've heard people talk about doing lacquer color repairs, and it gets all sorts of window painting and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to quickly show you just my formula very quickly for how to deal with what I call fender amber. And this you can salt to taste because not every amber is the same color. Some are a little bit more yellow, some are a little bit more orange, some are a little bit more brown, some are a little bit more pale, some are a little bit more vibrant. So this is how I approach it. I always start with clear. I always have a couple of mixing wells nearby because I may want to take something from here and then move it to here and adjust my color rather than constantly massaging the same cup. So I keep a couple nearby. The greatest thing in the world to mix them with is these mixing palettes. GluBoost sells them. There are other versions out there. You can get makeup ones to look like this. They're similar. They're plastic. I don't know what these are made of, the GluBoost ones. I still have some of the old GluBoost ones that were made of silicone, which I really like a lot. But these mixing palettes are typically what you mix them with. I'll show you how to clean them so that you can save them for longer and get more use out of them. So this is what I mix with. Plastic toothpicks are a must for being able to transfer colors and mix and apply to a guitar. Of course, I use mixing cups when I need to if I'm doing a lot of color where I'm mixing into more of a well than I am here. I keep my Q-tips and I don't know if you can see that, my Q-tips.
Doug, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
In another presentation you did, you talked about different kinds of mixing cups, the metal, and you said you got better results with color. I think the little, like, I don't know if they were aluminum little trays that you mixed color in.
I did used to do that. That was something I used to do a lot of. I have graduated from that for a simple reason. I'm cheap.
Okay.
Being somebody who's very conscious of. I think I have them in here somewhere. There we go. I still have some, but I was mixing into aluminum.
Okay.
I used to like it a lot because it gave me the same type of situation here where I can mix into a pool of finish rather than on a flat mixing palette.
Okay.
The mixing palettes that GluBoost sells, I've used those for a number of years and I like them, but my biggest problem with those is that I can't get a lot of finish on them. I'm forced into a position where, here we go. I'm forced into a position where if you're mixing onto a flat surface, there's only so much glue I can get here before it starts running over flat. It's not allowing me to
deal
pull
with
my color.
the trueness of the color, or your ability to tell how the color was going to look. So it didn't really have anything to do with that.
Well, it's something that I hemmed and hawed about.
Yeah.
Because I do like, one of the things I found as an advantage going this route was that since I was mixing on a gray surface,
Right.
it dulled down the color on me.
Okay.
So I wasn't looking through a prism where the underneath of the color that I was looking at was backed by white.
Okay.
That was something I gave up on over here a little bit. But by the same token, after watching these go up in price over the years, these are expensive. These are ointment tins that they're metal and they're expensive, and you can only use them once. Once the glue hardens in these suckers,
Yeah.
you got to throw it out. And it's like it just becomes the kind of thing where you become conscious of how much you're spending on stuff. And for my purposes, it was like, well, let me see if I can come up with an alternative. I found these mixing these shipping tube end caps, and I fell in love with them for a couple of reasons. One, as long as I'm conscious of the fact that I'm on a white background, I can adjust my color. But two, if you just let the glue dry in it, you can turn it over and pop the glue out, and it almost comes out in like this disc.
Okay.
Or I can pry it out. If you're scratching up the bottom of this, it'll stick to it. But if I'm mixing it and then I just let it dry and I don't use accelerator on it to force it to dry,
yeah,
I can just keep reusing these, and especially if I keep reusing them for the same color, I can just keep mixing on top of what I got. But these will pop finish out of them. I can just, it's almost like using silicone, not quite.
Okay.
But since they're flexible, I can get these and I can literally just push from underneath, misshape them, and if I have to even get a spatula underneath and pop that sucker out of there, and I get a disc of finish that I could throw away, and I got a fresh surface to mix on. And I feel so much better when I don't have to throw these out constantly, and I get to buy a box of 100 and they last me for a really long time.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why I graduated to these, is because, like Sharon says, I squeak when I walk.
Well, I appreciate thank you. I didn't mean to take you off track, but thank you.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
So here, I'm going to show you quickly my method for mixing what I would call a Fender amber. Amber is not amber. Yellow is not yellow. When we're looking at a guitar, it's actually a mixture of colors. So here I'm going to start with a yellow base. Let me see if I can get closer in here so we can see the. Am I zooming in? Yes or no? I got to take my finger cuts off. Hang on. There we go. So, oh, there we go. So you'll be amazed, hopefully, how much color, and hopefully it comes through on Zoom. So I know the Zoom's filters are not great, but how much color transfers with such a small amount of powder. So here, when I'm mixing, I mix a very little amount of color. I'll just grab a tiny bit, just a few kernels, a few flakes. I'll even shake it off if it's too much. I don't pull a huge lump of this stuff. It's just a very small amount of finish. Let's clear that back off.
And Doug, that's true for any color, right?
That's true for most powdered colors, but certainly for the GluBoost.
Yeah.
You know, when I mix colors, I try to be incremental about things, because when I'm doing a touch up on a guitar, I try to be incremental about it too. Just a quick mention about that. If we look over at this, where I think you can see, or maybe it's too close, maybe it's too blurry. There we go. You can see, I look at it from the side, perhaps? Yeah, here we go. You can see this area right here where I'm filling in color. That was all the way down to bare wood. And I was working in color, and now I'm working in my stator coats on top with GluBoost. You can see there's a little bit of a hollow still where there's a little bit of a dip. There I'm working my way into a color. There was a huge section missing down in here where I'm getting darker grain lines to match what's going on around it in these different colors. And I'm doing this whole thing with GluBoost. In fact, I'm not even really using many pens or anything like that. This, when I see a job like this to me is an incremental job where I'm trying to sneak up on the end result and perform this camouflage, as opposed to filling this with my color already mixed to match, because that never works out well. At least in my experience, I've never been able to achieve the kind of results that I was hoping for by doing it in a single application. So I've always been, you know, the tortoise wins the race kind of guy when it comes to color. And to me, incrementalism has always been the theme that wins the race when it comes to color matching. So here, I will grab just a little bit of yellow. I don't know what the best way to do that is, so I'm not getting in front of the camera. I'm just going to grab a little bit of yellow. You can see just a few kernels there. And I'm going to drop this in. Is that too blurry?
No, it's good.
And I'm going to mix it up. And you can see right away I'm getting pretty pale yellow and pretty deep, just with just a few kernels. Maybe I'll back up just a little bit and move the camera closer. So there, I'm getting kind of almost a lemon yellow, maybe a little bit paler than that. Keeping my paper towels nearby, I'll wipe that off so I get to continue to reuse my spatula over and over again without messing it up. If I want to go a little bit darker yellow and a little bit deeper yellow, I'll grab a few more kernels. That might even be a little bit too much, and I'll just pat some off on a paper towel, and I'll put some more in there, and that gets even a little darker. Let's go even a little darker. So now you can see there's a few grains of finish in there that have yet to dissolve. Those I'm not worried about. Those will dissolve in just a matter of a minute or two. And when I start seeing the kernels of finish, or the grains of finish, of color, I should say, not dissolve on their own, I can try using my spatula to mash them down a little bit. That might break them up enough to dissolve. If they don't, I'll just leave them, and they're going to dissolve on their own anyway. But I can try working them in. But I'll just usually just let them sit and see if they dissolve. If they don't dissolve, I'll pick them out with just a toothpick or something like that. So that's yellow. That you would think would be the best color for that binding. It's not. It's going to become too yellow, too lemon yellow, and by the time you get it dark enough to match in terms of hue, you're going to wind up being too fluorescent, too bright. So if we were going to use that for our Gibson guitar, for the white binding, I would want it less dull than that. And here's a case in point where I will have another welcome nearby. I can pour some finish off into another well. I can then take my fill and finish, dilute it, and get less yellow as a result if I was using it for that. Now keep in mind that I'm not using this for that Gibson with the cracked, the worn area of the face, because this is ultra thin. But you can see the difference right even in zoom, how pale this is compared to that. So I can dial back the color just by having another well nearby and dull it down, or have it deeper in color. Let's move this one aside. Now I'm going to put a little bit of amber in here. Again, I want to use just a little bit of color. I'm even going to go super little bit, where I'm just going to take, sometimes you can grab a little bit of finish easier by just getting your toothpick a little bit wet. But I'm just going to stick a toothpick's worth in there and just pick up what's hardly even noticeable. Watch what happens. Just that much. Now, case in point, I could feel my finger cuts sticking together, and if I had finish on there because I picked up a cup, if I wasn't paying attention, I could touch a guitar and screw up somebody's guitar, so the finger cuts get pulled off and new finger cuts get put on. That's the point I was trying to make earlier regarding that.
Yeah.
So here, mix the amber into my yellow. I'll go with even a little bit more. And just that small amount gives me enough orange, more amber, to get me a nice kind of a deep yellow amber color. Now you can go darker, you can go lighter, you can go more yellow, you can go a little bit more amber, you can put a little bit more orange in there. But that's, from my eyes, starting to look pretty close to my Fender amber. But it's not there yet. Because what's missing is brown. Now this is where you have to be careful, because brown is a pretty aggressive color. Brown, as we all know, is the combination of blue, red, and yellow. Blue, red, and yellow winds up making brown. I don't know what mixture of pigments GluBoost was using to make their brown, but I know it's brown. Move this aside. Again, I'm going to pick just a little tap. I'm even going to wipe some off, because here I get that little brown into my mixture. Now I can begin massaging color. If I want a little deeper, I could add a little bit more brown. We want to be careful about how much brown we're adding, because I don't want this to go sour on me. I don't want it to go flat, which the brown is going to dull down this color, but it's not, but that's the purpose of why I'm putting it in there. But I don't want it to get to the point where it begins to look like chocolate with mud. Now I might even add just a wee bit more amber if I'm dealing with like an Eric Johnson model where it's got that kind of really kind of sharp amber.
Hey, Doug, I would add also, when I was more of a beginner, but I still do this for brown because it is so aggressive. I'll make a cup of brown, liquid cup, and add the liquid rather than the straight powder, just because it's so easy to go over dark with that.
Yeah, it's a good technique where you mix some finish next to you and then add it. So here I've got a nice amber color, and that's what I'm going to use. You can see there's a few spots of the orange that have yet to dissolve. Those, if I give it a minute or two, will dissolve into the finish as I need to. If I need to come back and grab a kernel that I don't want in there with the toothpick, I can grab one with a toothpick and extract it if I really need to, or just avoid it. So that to me is a good amber. Let me put a cover on the brown so I don't wind up having a pile of. This is where we started. So you can see how you can dial in a color very nicely. If I had, and if I do, I have one here, thanks to our, let me back up a bit. If I have, thanks to the Penetrar boys, we have our Fender Amber mocked up guitar neck. I would normally put this in a Total Vice thing, but I've got my guitars and all of them at the moment. So here, I would grab a Q-tip and just drop it in. Let it soak it up. And then I will brush on the color. I don't know if you saw that go. It didn't get as dark as I wanted. In fact, you can still see it's a little light over here, a little light over here, a little light over here. But I want to sneak up on that dark amber. Whenever you spray your accelerator, which is, where did I put my, oh, there it is. Of course, we all know that GluBoost has the best accelerator on the planet because it's a dry accelerator. Also, matter of best practices and good habit, don't spray when there's super glue lying around. You want to move it out of the way so it's not present, because you don't want to contaminate your CA that you just spent time mixing with accelerant. That's now dry. I can move right to the next pass. I will sometimes go back and make sure that there's no accelerator still present. To Al's point earlier, accelerator hangs around for a while. Accelerator will remain active even after you wipe it on a surface or wipe it off of a surface. It'll remain active for quite some time, undisturbed for hours. So you want to be careful that you don't wind up sticking to it inadvertently. So if I then take my finish again, let it soak up on a Q-tip, and I just brush again, you can even go a second time if you don't want to go too many times in a row. I don't reuse Q-tips. I go through them like mad because I don't want to recontaminate. And plus, after you've brushed on there, it begins to harden pretty quickly. And I like to see it soak up into the head so I can know how saturated the head is. And we brush it on again. And if I keep going, accelerator. Normally I wouldn't be doing this with my cup of super glue sitting where the guitar is. I would actually be holding this in one hand while I brush it on this way. And then I grab my accelerator, spray my accelerator. This is in my hand over here away from the guitar. So this becomes a very kind of like two-handed, very quick process. And you can see in short order, I'm getting a nice amber color to the side of that neck, you know, that pretty well matches what's going on there. I need to go a little deeper. And every time I add another layer of CA, it gets deeper every time I put some finish on there. And then I sneak up on the darkness of the color that way, rather than trying to get this ultra dark and try to get it in one pass. That never works out very well for me. Let's quickly look at, move this aside. Let me grab a fresh one of these. And I'm going to go with GluBoost Fill and Finish regular, I guess, or full viscosity. And this, you can see how thick that stuff is. By comparison, it's pretty thick. And I do pour a lot in there. This is viscous enough, and this is thick enough where you can even see that there's some bubbles in there from me pouring it from so high up. That'll work itself out as I mix it. So again, there's a lot of waste. Not so much in the case of this Fender Amber, but there's still a bunch that I'm going to wind up throwing out once I let it cure on its own. You will be surprised how long this sits open on your bench. If you mix GluBoost colors well, you won't wind up setting off the super glue so quickly. This will stay open for quite a long while. I've had some of these things sit on my bench for an hour or two, and they're still open. You know, here I've got the full viscosity, the Fill and Finish Pro. I'm going to use the same spatula, but this is a mess. So I want to clean it before I use it again. I don't want any color from, you know, the brown or for the amber or anything else on there. So this is where I will grab one of my little pieces of paper towel and I will pour acetone directly on this sucker and wipe off the finish. And we wind up with, I have to add a little bit more up to there. And we have a perfectly clean spatula that I get to reuse and reuse and reuse. I probably shouldn't tell you that because Rick's gonna not sell as many.
I don't think they're making that much profit on those spatulas. I think it's coming.
Probably not. So here, I want a little bit of yellow in my fill and finish glue to be able to do that grain filling that we're doing on that L5 guitar over there. Again, here I don't want a lot of color. In fact, I'm not even going to use my spatula to transfer it. I'm going to use just a toothpick to be able to grab just a few kernels of it and drop them over here. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
But it's starting, you know, even for Zoom, I can even see the color change.
Yeah, definitely.
I want a little bit more, not a lot, because I want a super pale yellow to be the undercurrent of this guitar, because just the raw wood doesn't get me that honey yellow that that it looks like after, you know, 70 years of being in the world with black. So that's, I'm going to stick with that. I'm not even going to go any darker than that. I think that looks kind of like what I want. Toothpicks are not that expensive. I don't wash them because I go through them like mad. There was a company, I don't know if they still exist. Occasionally I still get an email from them telling me that they're having a sale. But they've been having one. It's almost like one of these Persian rug outfits that has it going out of business sale every week. But there was there. It is.
Hey, Doug, Andy wants to know if the thicker CA reduces the darkening of the spruce. And I think you said earlier that it does, right?
The thinner, well, yeah, it definitely reduces
It's not
the
absorbing in.
darkening in the spruce because it doesn't absorb in like the thinner water. I don't know what drawer I stuck my toothpicks in. There's a toothpick company called Armands, Armands, that I have bought toothpicks from, plastic toothpicks, and I had been in the habit of buying them by the trunkload, because I go through them a lot, and you can get a pretty decent deal on them. I don't know where the box of mine is. Last time I bought them, I think I bought about 5,000 bags of it somewhere. But I've been reorganizing in here a little bit. I don't know which drawer I stuck them in. So let's go take a look at this. I think that's a decent enough angle that you can see what's going on there, probably.
Yep.
So here I'm gonna don a fresh set of finger cuts so I don't transfer anything that I don't want on my fingers onto that guitar by accident. Now, here's a little bit of a different application, because here I'm paranoid about having that finish soak in to the raw wood. I want to seal it, at the same time add that pale yellow. See if I can hurry things all along a little bit. Sometimes I might just seal it and then try to deal with color on top. But here I'm going to try to do both at the same time. So here, my two applicators are, and let me get yeah, I can just do that rather than pull over. I don't have, because of the camera, I don't have room to pull over one of my bed tables. I normally would do this with a bed table nearby, but I'm pulling a fast one and doing what I shouldn't, which is putting my cup there while I'm over here. So my two applicators are either going to be a toothpick where I put it on like this, or one of these brushes if I want to put it on more aggressively. These brushes carry a lot of finish for their small size, so very often you can run into a situation where you drop down and too much finish flows out too quickly, and you wind up with this situation of like, oh shit, what do I do now? So I usually don't start here. I usually start here. So here, I'm going to put my goggles on so I can see. Here, my approach is not going to be to put finish down first. My approach is going to be to put a generous amount of accelerator first, because I really want this stuff to harden as it's getting put down. Then I will wipe any excess off, but I want the surface to be able to be activated as I'm putting down some of this finish. Now I'm going to get a drop of it on the end of my toothpick, and I'm actually going to touch the side because I don't want too much on there. So I want a little bit on there, but not a lot. I'm going to take a little bit of the excess off. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to get another paper towel so I can dab off if I need to. So I'm going to come in here. I just dried off my toothpick so I can show you what I'm going to do before I do it. I'm not going to brush on finish right next to where I already have finish. I want to alternate grains here so I can see what's going on between them, and I can fill this grain line here, alternating there, raw, and then there, because then I can go back and fill the voids as I go, and I have a better success of kind of filling up the. I'll stop talking while I'm doing this. Get a fresh toothpick. Am I in the way with the cup or no?
Nope.
Okay. You see what's happening? Is that
Yeah.
changing color? It's darkening a tiny bit, but it's not going brown like it was when I put naps on there. But it's getting my little bit of yellow. It's not complete yet, but let me go and hit that with accelerator and do that again. Is that close enough?
Yeah.
Because I can get closer, I think. If I get closer, it might get too fuzzy. It might not have enough definition. Did I screw things up by moving it?
No, you're good.
Okay. So here, again, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to skip a line. I'm going to come out here. Now the accelerator is causing the super glue to go off on my applicator. I'm going to go and grab a fresh one so I can pick up finish and run up that line right there. You see that one go dark?
Yep.
But it's not so dark that it doesn't match around here.
Yeah,
So that's the approach I'm going to be taking for this whole thing.
that's a great technique.
And I'll work my way up, and you get there pretty quick. I'm going to finish this line.
Core's asking if you have issues estimating the time it takes to do a repair like this. He asks, do you estimate the price for the customer?
Well, in this case, let me see if I can see this from another angle. Let me back out so it's not. Here we go. Does that help?
Yeah.
So we can see the shiny lines there of oops, I just lost my screen. There we go. So we can see the shiny lines here, 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 and here. Hit them with accelerator. They will scrape flush after they're dry, which they should already be dry. They are. I can feel that they're proud. I don't know if they've filled the cup entirely, but that's when I'll come by with my razor blade. This will also take a tiny bit of color off the top and dull it down a little bit and give me a very natural look. I don't know if it's showing in zoom, but when I'm looking from here all the way up to here, to my eyes, in this light, regardless of the zoom filter, there's no color change or loss. This is not darker here than it is here than it is here. I
Right.
don't know what it looks like through zoom.
No, yeah, it looks that way.
You know, but that gives me a very natural fill. Then I can come back and do the in-between colors, or if in this case I need to fill anything in. Right now I'm mostly concerned with color. I'm not concerned with how flat all of that is. So now, whoops, shapes there. So now if I had done that every other all the way up to here, I would have what looks like what your lawn looks like after the guy cuts up one way and down the other. And here, then I would come back in and I would fill in the in-between spots. And right now I'm only looking for color and sealing it. Because once it all looks uniform and it's all sealed, I'll be able to go back with just straight clear, fill over the top of it. Or if I wanted to do a French polishing job, I could do that. Now here, I'm not getting enough finishing. There we go.
I'll take a swipe at Corey's question. For pricing for me, what I do is I think about the most amount of time I think it'll take me, and then I'll add either 1 or 2 hours to that, and then I'll tell the customer that that would be like the worst case scenario, and I tell them I will cap it even if it takes longer, cap it at that amount, and tell them also that it usually takes me less time, but I just want to be allow for enough in case things take longer for whatever reason. And that usually works fine for me.
I'm since I've been doing this for so long, I'm actually pretty good at estimating the amount of time something like this is going to take for me.
Yeah.
So in the case of this job, plus like I said, the reason why I love fill and finish for these jobs is it goes quicker.
It's fast.
So in the case of this guitar, I have this area that he wants me to clean up. We have a crack repair that includes the finish time for the crack repair. That was from here to here. This was cracked all the way up. We have another crack from the F hole all the way up to here that is going to be filled very much in the same way as I just did this. And I will continue to do that. So what I estimated for him, and then he said, while you're there, can you clean up the rest? I said, well, tell me what clean up the rest looks like. Am I trying to make things like this thing go away? He says, no, not really, but just a little bit of the wear here and there. He's got a couple of scratches over here, but mostly it's just the two cracks and this horrible spot that's been bothering him because it was repaired so poorly. So here, between this, and this, I told him, and a few other spots, I said, I'll go through and fill some of the deeper spots that are really noticeable, or if you have any scratches or anything like that, we've got some stuff. I don't know if you can see it, but I've got some stuff in here that I said, yeah, I'll take care. I'll go in and backfill those. He's got a little bit around the switch there, but the rest of the guitar is actually pretty clean. I haven't decided yet whether I'm really going to bother digging that out like I dig those out, because he said that didn't bother him as much as this did. I may, depending on how much time I'm spending on the repair, if I'm ahead of schedule, I may go in there with a knife, cut that out, and do the same thing I just did here. But this here, if I wasn't teaching you guys how I do it, I would probably already be done with it. This is really not, this is maybe an hour's worth of work, in terms of the filling, and then the clear coats over that. So I estimated for him that, and what I normally do when I'm negotiating with a customer for that is I will discuss it from the standpoint of hours. I have a shop hourly rate, and when I'm looking at this, my guesstimate is this is going to be 5 to 7 hours for getting all of this to look like it, quote unquote, went away, or make it look better. And then, so I said, so we'll put it at about 7 hours and then we'll discuss the realities of doing finishing work. Sometimes you wind up painting yourself into a corner and having to deal with, figuring out how a guitar is going to do. Plus, you never know how a guitar is going to react. I said to him, I said, when I'm removing this, I don't know how deep I'm going to have to go. So why don't we put a cap of 10 hours on the finish repairs? And that's where my clock will stop. Now, in reality, will I put 10 hours in it? I don't know. Will I put 11 hours in it and only charge him for 10? I don't know. I might. Depends on how aggressively I'm kind of going after the job. Plus, I'm figure if I'm getting $150 an hour and I'm charging him for 10 hours to do all of this finishing work, that's a nice enough payday where I can afford to be generous. So this is not one of those jobs where I'm telling him, oh yeah, I think it's somewhere between an hour and a half's worth of work. And then I've got myself kind of stuck in a very tight cul-de-sac where I can't necessarily turn those numbers around. I normally quote finish repairs in a range of hours. I think that's going to be about 2 to 4 hours. I think that's going to be 5 to 10 hours. I think a major touch-up job or something like that, or something where I'm chasing my tail, having to cover somebody else's tracks where they've sawed their way all the way through the binding. And I say, oh, that one's going to that's probably going to add about 4 hours to the fret job. And the customer can decide whether or not he wants to take on that, that kind of an expense. In this case, he was perfectly fine with it, given the value of the guitar. This is a 50s L5. This is a 60s L5. And so this here, once I'm done doing what I'm doing here, and like I said, you can see how that's not objectionable in terms of how dark it's getting compared to what it would look like under just lacquer, where it would just go super brown. I can get a pretty discreet finish repair that once I fill it with clear over the top of it, it's going to look, it's going to be the kind of thing where the customer may even forget to look at it because it doesn't draw your eye to it. And that's always been my goal with a finish repair, is to make it discreet and make it where it doesn't call your eye to it, doesn't call itself to attention. So if somebody said, oh, I'd like to fill this, I can't get close to the camera now, but if I want to fill that gouge, and you wind up with something that looks like, a blackhead, well, then everybody can see that from three miles away. It's the first thing you see when you look at the top. So if it's the type of thing where we can get a very discreet, where we can even maybe benefit from doing a little bit of this, over here so it doesn't, so we can hide the forest and the trees. After I go back and get it level, fill it with clear, I'll apply finish a little bit differently. One of my favorite CA tricks. Let me just grab a crash dummy side here.
While you're doing that, we have a question from Clem. He says, I'm assuming that with this technique, following the grain lines, any unevenness in the fill and finish will just look like lacquer sinking back on spruce.
Well,
right?
the fill and finish is going to fill all the voids, and then when I'm, when I'm here where I'm at, where I can feel there's a little bit of proudness, at least in those spots, I'll come back and you can hear me decapitating whatever is at the high spots.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go back and fill the other spots, do the same thing. And once I got the color where I want it, I'll also know that all of those spots are sealed. So now I can go about backfilling with clear, doing a little level sanding, backfilling with clear, doing a little level sanding. Any inconsistencies, any hollows in the wood is going to look like the natural distortions we see in grain, the natural, the natural pockets we see, the bear claw kind of stuff. Like, I don't know if you can see that, like this stuff. It's going to look like bear claw, under the finish where you see these modular rays and stuff like that. All of the stuff that reflects light in different directions is going to look like this because the surface is going to be flat like it is over here. Mm-hmm. So after I've done matching my color and getting my grain to look like I want it to, then it's a matter of just backfilling it and painting on and sanding flush, painting on, sanding flush, and painting on and sanding flush. Everybody knows about these blue Scott paper towels. Sharon does the work of making sure we don't throw out full sheets of blue paper towels. We cut them into squares so we can use them more efficiently. But also now I've got a great applicator for CA because I can fold this, fold it again, fold it into whatever thickness I want. In this case, I might want kind of a thin applicator, fold it again in half, that way, pinch it. Now I've got the perfect GluBoost paintbrush where I can now just pour on this, the blue. I don't want the blue. I thought I was grabbing the green. You can grab the orange, you can grab the green. I wanted to grab the green in this case. I can pour CA right on the end of let it really soak up. And then if I got an area, say, hypothetically, say it's here, I can just brush it on. Overlap. Fill whatever voids I want. I'm brushing it on. I'm not going back over where I just went. I might overlap the edges just a little bit. Do that. Brush off my accelerator. Grab another blue towel. Fold it in half. Fold it in half. Let's say if I want that thick an applicator, fold it in half the opposite way. Pinch it. Just pour it right in. Or apply it right on. Now I have another surface that I can just paint on top of that. And just put layer on top of layer on top of layer. Build my finish that way. After it's dry, I can do, let's see what I got here. Grab just anything nearby. I'm just going to grab some 400.
Andy said he did that, and he said it seemed to remove finish or at least clean it.
Nothing removed from here.
Yeah.
This is all on here. What you got to be careful that you are not, because fill and finish, GluBoost is still a solvent heavy finish. There's still a lot of solvent in there that once it polymerizes, it's hard. So if you're putting it down on raw, you have to be careful that you're not going too slow. You might want to treat the area first with accelerator, but also you want to, if you're doing that, you also want to make sure that you're not pausing, because then you're
Right.
going to stick to your finish.
I've had that.
But yeah, then if you're moving too slow, you'll stick to it.
Yeah.
But I've never pulled finish off by using STA on. So here, I'm just going to grab. Let me
Now,
move some of the.
Andy's saying now he thinks he might have just been using too much GluBoost and overdid it and had to wipe it off.
Yeah, you can use too much, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Because if you're painting it on like you're painting on paint on a wall, it's certainly too thick.
Yeah.
You can see when I load it up, the nice thing about doing this kind of an application process is that when I put it on a paper towel, especially these absorbent blue paper towels, these Scott things. Let me try the fill and finish orange. When you put it in there, you can see how it soaks it up. The thicker the viscosity, sometimes it sits on the surface. If you put the blue on there, it would just be sitting on there like molasses on top. And then when you brush this on, it goes on much thicker than the green.
Yeah.
But you can see that there, you're getting a nice build.
Yeah.
You know,
Bill's fat.
it still has ridges to it because this is a paper towel which has a texture to it. I haven't found the good enough paper towel that doesn't have a texture to it. I've tried with these for applicators like that, and they're almost too absorbent, so they're too light, so they really suck up the super glue. There is this what is this other stuff called that's great for polishing guitars? It's Viva or somebody like that. This is great stuff for polishing and waxing and compound and buffing and all of that stuff. This stuff here, I thought it was going to be good for CA, but I very quickly found that it was, I don't know what chemical they have in Viva paper towels. I tried this in the hopes that it would work really well, but whatever they have in there, by the time you get the cap on, I don't know if this is going to show up in Zoom.
It's already drying.
Not only that, it's smoking.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's coming through in Zoom, but I'm seeing smoke just pour off of that thing, and this is already hard.
So does the blue not smoke?
No, the blue doesn't smoke at all.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Where do you get
I mean,
that?
it hardens. It's Scott blue paper towels.
I haven't tried that. I have to try it.
Yeah, I have I don't know if I have a.
Yeah, because the white paper towels I use always smoke and it smells.
Yeah, I think I have one in the package here somewhere, but it's Scott. It's Scott shop towels, they call them.
Okay.
Oh.
Chad says that Lowe's sells the blue towels. Scott shop towel. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I bought some. They were kind of expensive, but maybe I'll.
They are expensive. They are. Here's what they are.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know, they're great for this application. Like I said, they are expensive. So Sharon.
That's why you cut them up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we cut them up. Years ago, when we were a 7-person shop, we would go through these to the point where I felt like we needed to, hire a bankruptcy lawyer.
Right.
But so she just cuts them up into squares. But once it's dry, Then I come in with, starting with 400 grit, and I work my way up 600, 1,000, 1,200. I'll do the micro finishing film. Most of the time now, I'm just going to grab some wet or dry, just for the purposes of showing, just to take the ridges down, and then I'll go back and paint some more. And I just build that way, and it's a very quick way to be able to build a quick finish.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to do, if I'm not filling a cup, if I'm filling a void, then I do the drop fill thing. But here, it just paints on very nicely.
Looks like
For
a
an
more
area,
lace tomorrow.
yeah, for an area that if I'm doing a big touch up area, I'll do it that way. Or if you've got a crack in a side or something like that, I may not do that on the top of a guitar like this. I'm probably not going to be painting this whole area here. I'm probably going to be filling that cup, doing a little bit of brushing with the small makeup brushes, and get it flush and get it to the point where it's close by. And then I might go a couple of passes on the top, just to think. Or I may even brush some. I might even get, when I'm done, I may even just brush some lacquer over the top of it to let that sheen kind of match what's going on around me. Which is also the other thing that's awesome about GluBoost, is that it's the only CA that really looks good underneath lacquer.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of technique I would do there. I'll show you another quick one. Do we have time for one last quick one?
Sure. While you're at it, might as well.
So I have a guitar that is a red guitar that I'm not gonna. I don't think I have it handy enough to show you. Here we go. That is a red guitar, but it's a red sparkle finish that has had a little bit of a blowout. You can see a missing section of finish there.
Mm-hmm.
On the side, and I got the usual, can you do something about that, or can you make that go away, that kind of thing. So he must have hit something or something like that. Which matching red is one thing, depending on the red, it could either be easy or it could be not.
Mm-hmm.
Matching red on a Guild, D25 acoustic from the 70s is actually not. It's more of a
Reddish
not
brown.
really. It's like a reddish brown. It's kind of, it's like more like a cordovan
Mm-hmm.
than anything else. But that's a color that's easy to get close to. Sometimes candy apple reds are kind of very challenging, and then of course when you're dealing with sparkle finishes, that can be a bitch. And I still haven't come up with a great way to do it. From a touch-up standpoint, but I've come up with something that I can live with. In a circumstance like I just showed you, where you had I think Andy said the best thing to do is to go down to bare wood and then build your new finish.
He's asking about a headstock crack. That glue joint, gets darkens and just is kind of a mess to deal with.
Glue joints are on cross grain cracks are a little different. I might do, the next time I have one, I might do a little workshop on how to do cross grain cracks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little differently. That's another. There's a way to do that. It's again incremental, more than it is. I don't. If I can avoid going down to raw wood, I do it almost as just a matter of course.
Right.
It's I hate having to make things worse before I make things better.
Mm-hmm.
So here, let's talk about the red. If I take, let me try. This is the green. And here's another reason why I love mixing on glass. I just spilled some. It's gone. That's why I mix on glass. Cleans up super easy. So here's my red. I've heard it said that red GluBoost goes off super quick, like it causes GluBoost to harden too quickly.
I said
What I
that the
found
other
with
day.
it, I think maybe you did.
Yeah.
The problem with any kind of pigments in GluBoost is that maybe I'll try to demonstrate it, but if you put too much powder in too little glue, it'll cause it to go off. Now, if I just take just like our usual, like we were talking about before, just take a small amount of red, put it in there. You can see it goes dark, it goes red pretty quick. It's a little bit more of a pinkish because it's diluted. But the problem with red, and even to some degree blues, and some of those colors, is that by the time we get them, and let me demonstrate by pouring some off into another cup. Too much, I'm going to blow too much glue. But by the time we get enough red into this that gives us a deep, dark crimson that we're looking for, we have to keep adding more red to get that, that really deep crimson Fender, not that Fender dark, or that Gibson SG red, or that wine red from Gibson, Gibson Archtops. That's even there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit. Let me see if we can get a little closer.
Like blood red. Yeah.
There we go. That's even still a little bit not dark enough for me. And the problem is that with pigments are a solid powder that are suspended in superglue. The more pigment we add, the more is in suspension, and then all of those solids begin to congeal and cause the superglue to harden. We can even see here how that's starting to clump because there's so much pigment and so little glue, so little finish. Let me use my acetone to clean my spatula. That cleans up pretty well. I'm not going to go crazy with it because I'm just going to use more red. Again, here's why I use finger cots, because you don't want to go out to dinner and have your fingers look like that after they're filled with PA. So
Corey, hey, Doug, Corey is asking if you use similar techniques to repair finish after a crack repair or finish issues when fixing Martin binding. I guess the answer is
sure.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Depending on the color, depending on what, if I'm doing Martin binding work and I need that kind of yellowish, the color might be different from Fender Amber. There's actually a whole lot less yellow and a tiny bit more brown in those colors. But like I said, that's the beautiful thing about mixing with the colors. You get to sneak up on what you're looking for. Now this here, if I kept adding red, it would continue to get deeper and darker, and I would wind up with something that would go off too quickly. Inside of 10 minutes, this thing would be hard, and I'm still in the middle of my touch-up. And then you go, well, I just spent a lot of time getting that color. Let's go back to our pink over here. I'm going to add just a touch more red, not a lot, just a touch more red, just to get a little bit more red and less pink. Also keep in mind that we're looking through this to a white background like we were before. That's one of the things why I liked the aluminum, but the aluminum just got to be too expensive for me, and every time I went to replace them, they would go up in price. So I'm gonna stop there. I could keep going to try to get more red, but I don't want to waste my red. Two, I don't want to wind up with, which is where I'm at over here, or I got the color I want, but I know that's going to go off in 10 minutes. I want this open for a while because I'm in the middle of a finish repair. That's where black comes in. So I'm going to add, again, just a few grains of black. Let me add a few more. See what's happening. And we'll let that settle in. That's getting remarkably similar.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take a little more, it's going to take a few more minutes for the black to dissolve. I'm not sure why, but the whatever the pigment base is, and I think the pigment base, the basis for each color pigment, I think is a natural pigment. You know, so you're probably dealing with blues, you're probably dealing with some kind of, you know, some kind of blue oxide, some kind of, what is it called? Some kind of iron oxide for brown, or some kind of, the red oxide is like a blue ultra oxide, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
The green oxide is like a chromium oxide. So sometimes it takes a little bit more for those grains to go in, but you can see right off the bat that I'm getting a pretty close match.
Oh, it's really close.
In fact, this is actually a deeper crimson than that. Now, and I can add a little bit more red if I want. I can add a little bit of yellow if I want to soften it to a little bit more of like a faded orange cherry. I can even add a little blue if I want to deepen up the red a little bit to be a little bit more in the blue spectrum. But this will stay open a lot longer because there's less pigment in it than this will. So I've got, you know, if I'm dealing with GluBoost colors, red is not always the answer to a deep red. Red plus black or red plus yellow is going to give you a little bit more of the orange or a little bit of amber. And that's where the experimentation comes in for all of these different colors of GluBoost. GluBoost white powder is also a beneficial powder to have. It's going to turn something opaque if you put too much of it in. But if you want to get a color that's a little bit more pastel with the addition of white, that's starting to look a little bit more purple. By not adding blue, which is what we think should have happened. You know, if you add too much blue, you'll get grape. But if I want that Cordoba, you know, that Guild Cordovan, that's my Guild Cordovan right there. Because that was white, or excuse me, that was black and red, along with a little bit of white. That's how you deal with the powders with GluBoost. It's a good portion of it is experimentation, but you're sneaking up on a color by adding different things together. But the key is that you're not adding too much powder for too little glue. You know, to get to that red that we were looking for over here before I added the white, I was able to get there by adding black and very little of it by comparison. Whereas this, I can even see this is skinning over. In fact, that's already hard. We haven't even been here 10 minutes. You know, that's already skinned over and solid.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas this is still liquid. And that'll stay liquid for a much longer period of time.
Yeah. That's really awesome because that red was driving me bananas until yesterday when you said that, or what, 2 days ago.
And that's the key to it. It's the whole idea there is they realize you're still dealing with cyanoacrylate, which is a
Right.
polymer, an alcohol-based polymer that hardens when either moisture or solids get suspended in it. Moisture is what causes CA to go off.
Hmm.
So if you're adding solid molecules in the form of powder, which do dissolve into it, once you get too many molecules in there floating around in that suspension, now you've got all sorts of extra molecules in there and you're sitting here stirring them up. You got all sorts of extra molecules in there for moisture to bind to cause that CA to go off, and then ones are going off too quickly. And then, somebody will say on the internet that, oh, red GluBoost goes off too quickly and gets too clumpy. Well, guess what? You're using too much red.
Yeah.
You need a little bit of black to get to go think of the soda, black cherry.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great info.
Last thing, very quickly, because I mentioned the sparkle before, and we won't spend any time on this at all. I'll just pour some in just to show you. And this is the one area where I do use gloves instead of finger cups, because you'll see what I'm talking about as soon as I handle it.
I'm going to
There
answer. Go ahead.
there is a thing out there which people who use epoxies love. And I remember trying them a long time ago, and before I found the GluBoost powders. There's something called mica powders.
Yeah.
Which are pigments, but they're sparkly pigments. And that's the character of them. They get those, people who make those epoxy tables that look like a seascape, and they have the sea foam and all of that stuff. They're using mica pigments also in makeup and stuff like that. It's get all of that shimmery stuff going on. Let me put some of the orange in here, because I don't want to run out of my green. I need it for a few jobs. So I'm going to put the orange in there. Let me put some orange in here too, because I want to use red. Now, mica pigments, when you're dealing with a sparkle finish, not a flake. This isn't good for flake, but you can see how sparkly that is.
Mm-hmm.
This is mica powders, which this is, I think they call this rosewood. Now this, I'm going to just drop a lot in here, because it's really not going to dissolve. It's just going to suspend. And I'm just going to let it saturate in there.
I bought the Starbond set of mica powders. Play around with.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even remember whose this is, but all mica powders are pretty much the same. Starbond is just selling somebody else's. That's not their own brand. They're selling some third-party thing. But you can see how that shimmers, because it's got that opalescence to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think this is a red. They called it rosewood, so it's really not red. If it was actually a red, I might not even do it this way. But this goes into the conversation about experimentation. So here, that will give me some of my sparkliness on a repair, but it's the wrong color. It's close, but if I just drop fill that on a guitar, you're going to see it from a day away. But it gives me my opalescence that I'm looking for. So now I'm going to take my red GluBoost, and here's why I wear full gloves when I'm handling mica powders, because just like glitter, this stuff gets everywhere. Everything you touch has glitter on it. So before I then move to doing the next step, I'm just going to take all of the full glove off and get rid of it as soon as I'm done handling the mica powder, because even if, and I don't want to do it with, I'll do it with another glove, because I don't want, just this stuff transfers like crazy because it's so fine. If I'm just handling the bottle, you can see it transfer.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even have to have the thing open. I mean, just coming out of the package, it's like going to going to a preteen's birthday party and having glitter all over it. I only know that because I have a niece. So here, I'm going to grab my red. I'll grab another so we don't have to wait for me to clean off the other one. I'll grab some of my red. I'll get enough of it on there so it's just the red side of pink, not too deep. Always get in the habit of putting your covers on because you will wind up regretting when you get a huge red spot on your floor because you didn't put the cover back on your red and it fell off the bed. Don't ask me how I know that. Black. Take my black to get my red to be more crimson or more cherry. It's not, I'm not going to go crazy trying to get the perfect color. You guys get the idea. Come in here, and it's probably a little black, a little bit too much black. I should have stuck up on that. That's not too bad. That's a good red crimson. You know, as always, if I do too much color, you can always bring it back to lighter by adding more finish. And that's where I said, like I said before, waste is waste. You know, the guy who sells, 1,000 bagels a day doesn't cry when he has to throw 20 of them away, or even 400 of them away. So here's my black, my black cherry. Here's my mica. I'm going to do this. Well, actually, let me just do it right in here. I'm going to add my color in that way after I mix it together and mix it into my mica powder. I'm going to add in more of my red into my mica powder. By the looks of it, I'm going to add some of this red. Come on, like that red. A little better. Now I'm getting more of a reddish brown type of, more of a candy red shimmer to it. And then, last trick, everybody has seen this before, is wind up with a pretty sparkly red to be able to fill on. The problem with it is that you can see through it. However, putting it on white gives us the color we're looking for when we're looking for that sparkle red. So when I'm doing the touch up, and I don't know if it's coming through in Zoom, how you can see how it's iridescent. Is it? Not seeing the sparkle at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Huh. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's coming through in Zoom. I can see it, in front of me. But that's,
Yeah, you can see it.
if I was filling a void with that on a guitar, that gives me enough sparkle that I can get away with the color. The trick to doing that on the guitar is that you're doing it on raw wood, and you're always going to see through this to the raw wood, and it's going to go dark on you. So what I'm going to do with that guitar, and I actually didn't have enough time because Sharon and I played hooky yesterday and went to a book sale, is that void there, I think you can even see the color is pretty close there for just doing it on the fly without even having the guitar in front of me. But that void there, I'm going to fill with an opaque white at the bottom of the cavity before I drop this stuff in there. And that will give me my opalescence so that if I get the color pretty close, I'll be able to fake it and just fudge it enough so that it doesn't draw the eye to it,
Mm-hmm.
and gives me a plausible repair again that I'm not trying to make go away, because remember, everybody says, can you make that go away? Well, I say, you already did. I got to fill it with something. So here, that when I put it down with white and put it down with this, that's actually going to be a pretty, even there, it's probably not red enough. I probably need to put a little bit more black in there. But that's going to be a pretty good match if it sits over white.
Yeah. What do you use for the opaque white?
For that, I will use shellac.
Hmm.
Only because I've tried that with the GluBoost white, but it's too thick and it winds up filling up the cavity too much.
Yeah.
What I want to do there is typically I'll do, the same thing Jeff Jewett does. I'll just take some shellac, I'll put it into a mixing well, Oh, let me just grab one. Oh, there we go. I'll put that. Put a shellac. Grab my brush, any brush. Let me just grab a junky brush, rather than a good one, because then I can just throw it away. Grab white, blend all.
So the white blend is opaque enough.
White blend all is opaque enough. I also have some white aniline dyes. I've got this. I've got a zinc pigment here, a white zinc pigment. There's an antique white pigment there. You can use anything you want. I just grabbed the blend all first.
You could use mix all too, couldn't you?
You could use, mix all. I
thick.
don't like mix all in shellac
Okay.
because it's pretty thick
Yeah.
And it does, and for the small amount we're using, it's going to take a long time to dry,
Right. Yeah.
and it'll bleed up.
Okay.
You can use either zinc or titanium dioxide if you want. If you want to go with a straight pigment, so I can use titanium dioxide if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
You can grab a little bit of that, put it next to it, grab some, put it over here. So I can just use straight titanium dioxide, which is going to be incredibly opaque. Titanium is the same stuff. Titanium dioxide is the same stuff they put in skin with a sunblock.
Oh, right.
So that inside
Wow.
the shellac will be nice and opaque. I can
Mm-hmm.
use that. I use titanium dioxide for a lot of stuff. Titanium and zinc oxide. Zinc oxide is more translucent. So if you use zinc oxide, I don't have any alcohol to clean this up with, but you just brush it off on a paper towel. Zinc oxide, I'm doing that for my
Mm-hmm.
white. You'll be able to see the difference right away between even a lot of zinc oxide.
Oh, right. Yeah. Not as white.
You can see how you're seeing through it.
Mm-hmm.
And titanium dioxide is opaque.
Mm-hmm.
This, by the way, was the first attempt at liquid binding, mixing the two to get the right color. It was originally tried to mix it into shellac, then I tried mixing it into. Eventually, I mixed it into super glue, and then started adding all sorts of solvents, dioxane, and then butyl, and all of that
Mm-hmm.
type of stuff. And then, of course, Rick saved my life and made a commercially available one, which hopefully they'll sort out the issues with that, because it's wonderful to have it in a bottle with as
Yeah.
often as we use the liquid binding technique.
Right.
But that was the impetus behind the original liquid binding 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Then mixing that into CA and trying to keep it suspended.
You can't.
However, well, yeah, you wind up that's when you have to add all sorts of crap to it.
Right.
Like the dioxane and the butyl and
Mm-hmm.
the butyl phthalate and all of that type of stuff. If I take just shellac over to here and I add the blendol, I suspect the blendol powder is closer to zinc than it is titanium,
Mm.
because you can see it has the same kind of
Oh, yeah.
quality as over here. It's a little yellower than this, so
Mm-hmm.
there's other stuff in there, but it's a little bit more translucent. So I might go with titanium just to give myself an opaque bottom to that cavity, so
Mm-hmm.
that when I put this stuff over it,
It'll have that backing. Yeah.
yeah. Now this stuff isn't dry yet, so unfortunately
Right.
it's not going to look like we want it to. But you can see,
Yeah.
might be a little dark, but you can see how iridescent it is.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's got a white background to it,
Yeah.
it's reflecting black at you, as opposed to like you're looking through to the dark wood grain, and that'll give me a better color. If I get that a little bit more cherry red, then this is a little bit on the purple side, because I used a little bit too much black.
And you can use
want
can you use lacquer with those white colorants you're using?
with titanium. These are just pigments, so you can use them in almost anything.
Okay.
Um,
Flame had a question about.
Yeah, so the whole thing with pigments, just for everybody to remember, they're, generally speaking, in the big broad spectrum of things, you have pigments and you have dyes. The difference between a pigment and a dye is the pigment is going to remain suspended in the liquid
Mm-hmm.
until it dries. And of course, if If it takes too long to dry, it'll all settle to the bottom. So the whole idea is to keep it suspended in whatever medium you're putting it in, whether it's shellac, whether it's lacquer, whether it's alcohol, whether it's whatever.
Right.
A dye dissolves into the liquid that it's in.
Right.
And it remains dissolved. It doesn't separate. That's the difference between a pigment and a dye.
Okay.
These iridescent mica pigments, which are really I only found this use for them. I haven't really used them for very much, and they very rarely come up. But they are a pigment, and they remain suspended. And if this once it's well mixed and it's iridescent, if I just let it sit here, all of those pigments are going to settle to the bottom,
Right.
and it'll stop looking iridescent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you want to get it in CA. You want to drop it on there like it is there now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little iridescent, and then you would hit it with your accelerator to just keep it suspended. So this way now, and I don't know if we can see this here, you can see how it's shiny.
Yeah.
And if I had gotten the color right, that would be and of course, what's beneath it, by the way, you can even see that bubble floating around. What's beneath it isn't dry yet, so you don't want to put it on your white until your white is dry.
Right.
You know, then you hit it with accelerator, then you put the color on, and then you hit it with accelerator on top again to make sure that that pigment remains suspended in the finish, and that gives you the difference of this versus this. So that anything that's behind that is going to cause that to look dark. That's why all of those drop fills, if you do try to use this stuff, don't look very well, because the dark wood behind it is going to change the color of it.
Right.
As opposed to this, if you're over white, of course I didn't bother spraying that with an accelerator, so
Right.
it will wipe right off. But if I did it again, where I hit it with accelerator, which I should have.
Clem wants to know how long the shellac takes to dry.
Shellac takes, as usual, you got to leave it for a couple hours till it's really hard. It'll dry to the touch pretty quickly. This is dry, but it's fragile enough that it's still coming off. And if I wipe it on my finger, it's wet still. So it's like it's an evaporative finish. You got to let all of the alcohol evaporate. That's the same with any evaporative finish. This is sitting here. This stuff is sitting on top of the white, and that bubble underneath is the finish underneath showing through because it's still wet.
Yeah.
Whereas this, by the way, where I just sprayed, is now dry. So I hit it with the accelerator, and it's dry. And no matter what's underneath it, it won't change the color match that you make. As opposed to this, I can see through that, and it's changing color depending on what's underneath it. If it's white underneath it, it looks like a different color. If it's black underneath it, it looks even different. Whereas this, no matter what's underneath it, because it's opaque underneath.
Right.
That's why I love using these to test my colors. I would be able, if this was the guitar I was using it on, I could do this and I could come over and test it against what I'm looking at. That's why I love these things, because I can see what it looks like clear. I can see what it looks like under opaque. So that's why these microscope slides are great touch-up tools. And you can see there how it's kind of iridescent. You're seeing that kind of sparkly finish to it.
Yeah.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thanks, Doug. That was great. Before we do, if you want to spotlight one more time, the overhead camera that I had.
Yes, I can do that.
I just threw some of that mixture on top of a acoustic dummy guitar.
I see where we're at. So that, what you've got is like that yellowish color. That's like the kind of that lighter color that's in between the grain lines.
Right.
And you just globbed it on there.
I just lobbed it on
purposes
just
of-
for the purpose of so people can
Yeah.
see.
So if you were trying to fake, the grain of a wood of a crack, you would be able to get that. I would even go a little lighter, and
Yeah, I
then,
was gonna say I'll go lighter and then you can darken it up.
but you would have to do that and have it recessed under the surrounding finish, and then
Yeah,
build
you
on
definitely
top
have
of
to
that.
finesse it, but that's just to give people a basic idea.
Oh, okay.
You can see it's super thick, so it hasn't gone anywhere since I lobbed it on there. Yeah, like now it's definitely starting to be a lot more sticky by now. So anyway, Doug, thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure.
Al, Doug, thank you guys both. This was great.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, Ian had to bail a bit because he was definitely not feeling
When
it, so
take care, guys. Thank you.
yeah, sure. I appreciate you guys sticking around and checking it out.
Yeah, Alan, thanks for doing this.
Sure, Doug, it was great.
I learned a lot.
Thank
Me
you,
too.
Doug. Thank you, Al.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate
welcome. Sure, Neil.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Good
Sure.
stuff.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
It really was good, this one. There was so much stuff in it.
Yeah, there was a lot. I knew there was going to be. So
Yeah.
we'll do some more too. Thanks for sticking around.